Believe in yourself. They told him he was too old to start over. Not cruelly. Some of them said it with genuine concern, with the particular kindness of people who believe they are protecting someone from disappointment. His colleagues, his family, the friends who had watched him build 23 years in a profession that had just been made largely obsolete by a shift in technology so complete and so rapid that the skills he had spent 2 decades mastering were now worth a fraction of what they had once commanded. He was 51 years old. He had a mortgage and 2 children in university and a wife who worked and who would work harder if the situation required it, but who was watching him with the specific quality of attention that the people who love us direct at us when they are not sure we are going to be okay. And he was not sure he was going to be okay. Not because of the financial situation, though the financial situation was genuinely difficult. Because of something deeper and more disorienting than the finances. Because the thing that had given the previous 23 years their particular shape and texture and meaning was gone. And without it, he was not entirely sure who he was. Not sure what he was capable of. Not sure whether the version of himself that had built a career in one world had anything left to offer in a completely different one. He sat in his home office on a Tuesday afternoon, an afternoon that would previously have been filled with the specific demands of a career he no longer had, and he held this uncertainty the way you hold something fragile. Carefully. With the specific attention of a person who is afraid that if they grip too hard it will break into something worse. Then he opened a book he had been given years earlier and never read. A collection of writings by a Roman emperor who had been dead for nearly 2,000 years. He opened it to a random page and read something that stopped everything. He read, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He sat with this for a long time. Not because the words were new to him. He had encountered this idea before, in various forms, across various contexts. But because in this specific moment, sitting in the specific wreckage of a career he had not chosen to lose, surrounded by the specific uncertainty of a future he could not clearly see, in this moment, the words were not an abstraction. They were not philosophy to be admired from a comfortable distance. They were a direct address to the exact thing that was happening inside him. To the specific interior experience of a person who has confused believing in himself with believing in the external structures that had been propping up the self he knew. He had not lost himself. He had lost the external confirmation of himself. And he had, without fully realizing it, built the confidence to live inside his own life on the foundation of that external confirmation rather than on the foundation of anything genuinely interior. His name was Paul. And the following 3 years, 3 years of genuine interior work, of deliberate and sometimes frightening engagement with the question of who he was when the external structures were gone, produced something that the 23 years of comfortable professional success had never produced. A genuine belief in himself. Not the belief that circumstances were going to cooperate. Not the belief that the next career would be as comfortable as the last. But the specific, practiced, philosophically grounded belief that he was someone capable of meeting whatever came. That the interior resources he had were sufficient, if genuinely developed and genuinely trusted, for the navigation of a future he could not yet see. He built something new. Not the same as what had been lost. Better in several ways, because it was built from the genuine interior rather than the convenient external. And more his, in a sense that the previous career, however comfortable, had never quite been. This is what we are building today. Not the performance of confidence. Not the manufactured certainty of someone who has not honestly examined what they actually believe. The genuine, deep, philosophically grounded belief in yourself that the Stoics identified as one of the most fundamental and most demanding achievements available to a human being. This is Stoic Ascension. Subscribe to this channel right now and turn on your notifications because every single video here is built for exactly this depth of genuine philosophical work. The kind that changes not just how you feel about yourself on good days but what you are made of when the days stop being good. What comes after this builds directly on everything you are about to hear. Do not miss what is coming. What believing in yourself actually means, and what it does not. The phrase has been so thoroughly colonized by motivational culture that its genuine meaning has been almost entirely replaced by a caricature of itself. And the caricature, however appealing in the moment, does not hold under genuine pressure. Which is why so many people who have consumed enormous quantities of motivational content still find, in the genuinely difficult moments, that the belief they thought they had built was not actually there. The caricature goes like this: believing in yourself means being certain that things will work out. That the effort will produce the desired outcome. That the dream is genuinely achievable and the specific version of the future you want is genuinely coming. That confidence means the conviction of success and the absence of the doubt that would otherwise qualify that conviction. This version of believing in yourself is not belief. It is magical thinking wearing belief's clothing. And it fails, specifically and reliably, at the moment of genuine difficulty. Because genuine difficulty arrives in the form of evidence that things are not working out. That the effort is not producing the desired outcome. That the specific version of the future being pursued may not be the one that arrives. And the person whose belief was built on the expectation of the desired outcome discovers, in that moment, that the belief had no genuine foundation beneath the expectation. It was dependent on the expected outcome for its existence. And when the expected outcome stops appearing, the belief disappears with it. The Stoics built something completely and deliberately different from this. Genuine belief in yourself, in the Stoic understanding, is not belief that things will work out. It is belief in your capacity to work with whatever arrives. Not confidence in the outcome but confidence in yourself as the person navigating toward it. Not certainty that the future will cooperate but certainty, genuinely earned, practiced, and tested certainty, that you are someone who can continue regardless of whether it does. This distinction changes everything about both the content of the belief and the way it is built. Because the belief that is dependent on outcomes is dependent on something outside yourself. On the world's cooperation. On circumstances being favorable. On other people's decisions, market conditions, timing, and the 1,000 other factors that are never fully within anyone's control. And the belief that is grounded in your own capacity, in the specifically and honestly assessed understanding of who you are and what you are genuinely capable of, is grounded in something that the world cannot remove. That does not require the world's cooperation to remain stable. That holds precisely in the moments when the world is providing the most compelling evidence that it is not going to cooperate. This is what Paul found in that home office. Not the return of certainty about how things were going to go. But the beginning of genuine certainty about who he was as the person navigating the uncertainty. That is the real thing. And that is what we are building today. Why most people do not genuinely believe in themselves, and why they think they do. The most unsettling truth about the absence of genuine self-belief is the same unsettling truth about unclear thinking. It feels, from the inside, exactly like its presence. Most people who do not genuinely believe in themselves believe that they do. They have the vocabulary of self-belief. They can express confidence in appropriate social contexts. They have the outward presentation of someone who trusts themselves. And in the comfortable, low-stakes, circumstances cooperating moments of ordinary life, the performance is so smooth and so consistently unremarked upon that it can be maintained indefinitely. It is only in the genuinely difficult moments, the moment of real failure, the moment of public humiliation, the moment of significant loss, the moment when the external structures that have been propping up the confidence are suddenly removed, that the difference between genuine self-belief and its performance becomes fully visible. The person with genuine self-belief is altered by these moments. Genuinely affected. The difficulty is real and the impact is real. But the foundation holds. The sense of who they are, not dependent on external structures for its stability, survives the removal of those structures. The belief in their own capacity to navigate continues even when the evidence of what the navigation will require is genuinely daunting. The person whose self-belief is primarily performance discovers, in these moments, that the performance has no foundation. That beneath the vocabulary of confidence and the outward presentation of self-assurance, there was nothing that the external structures were not providing. And the removal of the structures reveals the absence of the genuine interior belief that the performance was substituting for. This revelation is among the most disorienting experiences available to a person who had not seen it coming. And most people do not see it coming. Because the performance was so smooth and so consistent that it had become indistinguishable, from the inside, from the genuine article. The Stoics were precise about the sources of this condition. They identified three primary patterns through which the performance of self-belief substitutes for the genuine article. The first is the grounding of confidence in external validation. The belief in yourself that is actually belief in others' belief in you. That rises when recognized and falls when ignored. That expands in the presence of approval and contracts in the presence of criticism. This is not belief in yourself. It is belief in what others currently think of you, experienced as belief in yourself because the two have never been distinguished in practice. The second is the grounding of confidence in past success. The belief in yourself that is actually the memory of previous outcomes. That works well when the current situation is similar enough to previous situations that the remembered success genuinely predicts current capacity. And that fails when the current situation is genuinely new, when the previous success is not a reliable guide to the current challenge, because the belief had no foundation beyond the remembered outcome. The third is the grounding of confidence in the absence of genuine challenge. The belief in yourself that has never been tested by anything that required the full weight of your genuine capacity. That has been maintained in comfort, that has never been pressed to the edge of what it can actually hold. And that discovers, when the genuine challenge arrives, that untested confidence is a different thing from tested confidence in ways that the testing makes devastatingly clear. Paul had all three. The validation from colleagues and industry recognition. The memory of past professional success. The confidence of someone who had built something in circumstances that had been consistently favorable. And when all three were removed simultaneously, when the industry changed and the validation disappeared and the past success became irrelevant and the circumstances became genuinely unfavorable, what remained was the specific emptiness that the performance had been covering. The Stoic work that Paul began in that home office was the work of building something that could not be removed. Not the return of external validation. Not the reconstruction of past success. Not the creation of new comfortable circumstances that would allow the performance to resume. The genuine, interior, self-grounded belief that the Stoics identified as both the most difficult and the most valuable thing available to a human being who takes their own development seriously. The Stoic foundation of genuine self-belief, what it is actually built from. Genuine self-belief, in the Stoic framework, is not built from affirmations. Not from the repetition of positive statements about yourself until the repetition creates the feeling of truth. Not from the deliberate avoidance of information that might challenge the belief. Not from the surrounding of yourself with people who will confirm the belief unconditionally regardless of what genuine examination would reveal. These things produce a feeling that resembles self-belief. They do not produce the thing itself. Because the thing itself is built from something considerably more demanding and considerably more real. It is built from genuine self-knowledge. From the honest, unflinching, comprehensive examination of who you actually are. What you are actually capable of. Where your genuine strengths are located and where your genuine limitations are. What you have built and how you built it and what the building revealed about the material you are working with. What you have failed at and what the failure revealed about where the current limits of your capacity are located and what developing those limits further would require. This self-knowledge, honest, complete, neither inflated by the need to feel good nor deflated by the harsh inner critic that overcorrects toward diminishment, is the foundation that genuine self-belief is built from. Not because the honest examination always produces a flattering picture. It does not. Genuine self-knowledge reveals genuine limitations alongside genuine strengths. It reveals areas of genuine underdevelopment alongside areas of genuine capability. It reveals patterns that have been limiting you alongside capacities you have not yet fully developed. But it also produces something that flattering self-assessment can never produce. Accuracy. Genuine knowledge of what is actually there. And genuine knowledge, even when it includes the honest recognition of limitations, is the only foundation on which genuine belief can stand. Because the belief built on genuine self-knowledge is not vulnerable to being disproved by the revelation of what you genuinely are. It already knows what you genuinely are. It has already incorporated the limitations and the strengths, the development and the underdevelopment, the full picture of what is actually there. And from that full, honest picture, it makes a specific and genuine assessment. This is sufficient. Not perfect. Not unlimited. Not guaranteed to produce every desired outcome. But sufficient, genuinely, thoroughly, testably sufficient, for the navigation of what comes. For the meeting of difficulty with the capacity to continue. For the engagement with uncertainty with the genuine interior resources to maintain direction through it. Epictetus built this kind of self-knowledge in the specific conditions of slavery. He had no external validation to build on. No past professional success to remember. No comfortable circumstances to maintain the performance within. What he had was the most direct and honest possible engagement with the question of what was actually present in his interior when everything external had been removed. And what he found, what his philosophy is built from, is the recognition that what is present in the interior, when honestly examined, is more than the external would suggest. That the capacity for genuine judgment, genuine intention, genuine chosen response, these things, which were genuinely his in conditions that had taken everything else, were sufficient for the generation of a life of genuine meaning and genuine dignity. Not the life he would have chosen. Not the life that external circumstances would have provided if external circumstances had been generous. The life available in the specific conditions he actually occupied. And that life, built from genuine interior resources rather than from external provision, was genuinely, philosophically, humanly sufficient. This is the foundation. Not affirmation. Not performance. Not the comfortable avoidance of what genuine examination might reveal. The honest engagement with what is genuinely there, followed by the genuine recognition, earned through honest examination rather than assumed through flattering self-assessment, that what is genuinely there is enough. The specific practices that build genuine self-belief. Genuine self-belief is built through specific, daily, consistently practiced disciplines that the Stoics developed over centuries of philosophical work and personal testing. Not through the dramatic gesture or the single transformative moment. Through the accumulation of small, honest, daily acts of genuine interior engagement that compound over months and years into the specific quality of self-knowledge and self-trust that we are calling genuine belief in yourself. The practice of honest self-inventory. The foundation of everything else is the honest, regular, non-punishing examination of what is actually present. Not what you wish were present. Not what you fear might be present. What is actually, genuinely, honestly there. This examination has two dimensions that must both be present for it to be genuine. The first dimension is the honest acknowledgement of genuine strength. Not the performance of humility that denies real capability. Not the self-effacement that dismisses genuine achievement as luck or circumstance. The honest, clear-eyed recognition of what you have actually built, what you are actually capable of, what you have demonstrated through genuine action in genuine circumstances that you can do. Most people who lack genuine self-belief err on both sides simultaneously. They simultaneously inflate in some areas, claiming capabilities they have not genuinely developed, and deflate in others, denying genuine capabilities that honest examination would confirm. The honest inventory requires the correction of both distortions. The refusal to both inflate and deflate. The honest assessment of what is actually there. The second dimension is the honest acknowledgement of genuine limitation. Not as self-punishment. As accurate information about where the development work needs to go. The honest recognition of the specific areas where current capacity is genuinely limited, where the skills are underdeveloped, where the experience is insufficient, where the patterns are limiting, is not evidence against believing in yourself. It is the most useful input available to the person who is working to become more genuinely capable. The person who cannot honestly acknowledge their own limitations is building their self-belief on a partially false picture. And the self-belief built on a partially false picture is vulnerable to every experience that reveals the falseness. The honest acknowledgement of limitation is what makes the self-belief built on top of it durable. Because it has already incorporated the limitation into the picture. It is not surprised by its revelation. The practice of values-grounded identity. One of the most significant discoveries of Paul's 3 years of interior work was the specific recognition of what his identity had been built from. The profession, the industry, the specific social role that the career had provided, the particular way he had been seen and recognized and valued by the world in which he had operated. All of this was external. All of it was provided rather than generated. And when the provision stopped, the identity that had been built from it experienced exactly the destabilization that an identity built from external provision will always experience when the provision is interrupted. The Stoic practice is to build identity from the inside out rather than from the outside in. Not from what you do but from who you are. Not from the role the world has assigned you but from the values you have chosen and the degree to which your choices have honored them. This is the specific interior work of asking, and answering honestly, the questions that genuine values-grounded identity requires. What do I actually believe is worth pursuing? Not what have I been pursuing because the circumstances made it available or because the people around me have pursued it. What do I, from the most genuine interior I can access, believe is genuinely worth the investment of a human life? What do I stand for? Not what do I say I stand for in the contexts where saying it costs nothing. What do I actually stand for in the moments when standing for it is genuinely expensive? What kind of person am I working to become? Not what kind of person am I currently appearing to be. The direction I am genuinely moving in. The character I am actually building, choice by choice, in the ordinary and sometimes extraordinary circumstances of my actual life. The answers to these questions, honest answers, arrived at through genuine examination rather than through the rehearsal of preferred self-images, are the material from which a genuinely stable identity is built. An identity that is not removed when the external structures change. That does not collapse when the circumstances stop cooperating. That holds precisely in the moments when everything external that had been confirming it is suddenly absent. Paul discovered, in the 3 years after the career ended, that he had values he had never fully honored because the career had not required their honoring. Capacities he had never fully developed because the comfortable professional role had not required their development. Directions that were genuinely his, that had been sitting beneath the career's particular demands, that were more alive and more genuine than the professional identity that had covered them. The loss of the external identity was genuinely painful. And it was also, in a specific and important sense, the most valuable thing that could have happened to him. Because it removed the substitute and created the space in which the genuine thing could be found and built. The practice of deliberate challenge. Genuine self-belief is not built in comfortable circumstances. The Stoics were explicit about this. Seneca wrote that the person who has never been genuinely challenged has no genuine knowledge of their own capacity. That the belief in yourself that has never been tested is a hypothesis rather than a conviction. And hypotheses, however attractive, do not hold when the real test arrives in the way that genuine convictions hold. The practice of deliberate challenge is the specific, ongoing practice of placing yourself in situations that require more of you than the comfortable situations you have mastered. Not recklessly. Not in ways that are designed to produce failure rather than growth. But consistently, with the genuine intention of finding and then developing the current edges of your own capacity. Because here is what the practice of deliberate challenge produces that no other practice can produce: the specific, direct, embodied evidence that you can handle more than you currently know you can handle. Evidence from your own experience. From the direct encounter with difficulty that exceeded your current comfort and was met anyway. From the specific discovery, available only through genuine challenge, that the feared condition, when actually encountered rather than imagined, was more workable than the fear of it suggested. This evidence, this accumulated, direct, personally experienced evidence that you are more capable than the comfortable version of your life has required you to demonstrate, is the most convincing possible foundation for genuine self-belief. Not because someone told you that you were capable. Not because past successes in comfortable circumstances suggested you might be. Because you have been genuinely challenged and have genuinely continued. And the continuing, experienced directly, builds the specific conviction that continuing is something you can trust yourself to do. Marcus Aurelius sought challenge. Not because his position as emperor did not provide him with challenges beyond what most people will encounter, it provided him with more than enough. But because he understood that the capacity for meeting challenge is built through meeting challenge. And he worked, deliberately and consistently, to ensure that his capacity was being built rather than merely maintained. The practice of honest self-compassion. This is the practice that most discussions of self-belief omit. And the omission is significant. Because genuine self-belief without self-compassion produces a brittle confidence that shatters at the first genuine failure. That cannot incorporate imperfection without being undermined by it. Genuine self-compassion, in the Stoic sense, which is neither self-indulgence nor the avoidance of honest self-assessment, is the practice of holding yourself to the same quality of honest, fair, constructive engagement that you would extend to a person you genuinely care about. The person you genuinely care about who fails at something important does not receive from you the specific cruelty of the inner critic that most people direct at themselves in the moment of their own failure. They receive your honest assessment of what happened. Your honest identification of what the failure reveals about where the development needs to go. And your genuine confidence that the failure is a data point, not a verdict. That the person who failed this time is also the person who is capable of learning from the failure and continuing with more genuine capacity than they had before it. This is what you deserve from yourself. Not the performance of self-acceptance that never honestly examines anything. Not the harshness of a self-critic that treats every imperfection as evidence of fundamental inadequacy. The specific, honest, constructive, genuinely caring engagement with yourself that you would extend to someone you love. The Stoics practiced this. Not through affirmation. Through the specific quality of the evening examination, the honest review of the day that was patient and fair rather than punishing. That identified what had not worked without treating what had not worked as the final statement about the person who had not made it work. That extracted the lesson and then released the failure rather than carrying it forward as punishment. This practice, the daily exercise of honest self-compassion, is what makes the other practices sustainable. Because the person who is consistently cruel to themselves in their own interior will eventually stop examining honestly, in order to avoid the cruelty that the examination produces. And the examination, the honest, regular, engaged examination of what is actually there, is the foundation on which everything else is built. The practice of demonstrated commitment. Genuine self-belief is built through the accumulation of kept commitments. Not large, dramatic, publicly witnessed commitments. The small, private, daily commitments that no one is tracking and no external reward is reinforcing. The commitment to the morning practice when the morning is hard. The commitment to the honest examination when the honest examination is uncomfortable. The commitment to the value when honoring it is genuinely expensive. The commitment to continuing when stopping would be easier. Each kept commitment is a deposit into the specific account that genuine self-belief is drawn from. The account of evidence that you are someone who does what you say you will do. Who continues when continuing is difficult. Who honors their own standards even when the only witness is yourself. And this account, unlike the account of external validation that most people are trying to fill from the outside, compounds. Because every kept commitment makes the next one more possible. Because the evidence of your own reliability, accumulated over time, becomes the most convincing possible foundation for genuine belief in yourself. Not belief in what you might do. Belief in what you have demonstrated, through direct action in real circumstances, that you actually do. Paul discovered this in a specific and practical way during his 3 years of rebuilding. He could not know how the professional direction he was building would turn out. He could not know whether the specific choices he was making would produce the outcomes he was working toward. He could not have the confidence of someone who had been here before and knew how it ended. What he could have, what he built, day by day, through the specific practice of making commitments to himself and keeping them, was the confidence of someone who knew himself as someone who keeps his commitments. Who continues when continuing is hard. Who shows up for his own interior work with the same reliability that the previous career had required him to show up for external demands. And that confidence, built from the inside, grounded in genuine demonstrated behavior rather than in external validation or comfortable circumstances, was both more durable and more useful than anything the comfortable professional success had provided. Because it held in the uncertain conditions. Because it did not require the outcome to maintain itself. Because it was built on what he actually did rather than on what circumstances were currently providing. What believing in yourself requires you to stop doing. The building of genuine self-belief requires not only the adoption of specific practices but the deliberate cessation of specific patterns that are actively preventing it. These patterns are deeply embedded and often feel like protections, like self-preservation measures rather than self-limiting ones. But they are among the most significant obstacles to the genuine interior development we have been discussing. Stop comparing your interior to other people's exterior. This is the most universally practiced and most consistently damaging pattern available to the person trying to build genuine self-belief. Because the comparison is structurally unfair in a way that guarantees the conclusion it produces. You have access to your own full interior. The doubts, the fears, the uncertainties, the failure experiences, the underdeveloped capacities, the private knowledge of every time the performance did not match the genuine interior reality. You see yourself from the inside. You have access to other people's carefully curated exterior. The presentation they choose to make in public contexts. The achievements they choose to share. The specific selected moments that make it to the visible surface of their lives. Comparing these two things, your complete interior against other people's selected exterior, is like comparing a full medical file to a resume. One contains everything. The other contains only the best selected highlights. And the comparison consistently produces a specific and completely inaccurate conclusion, that other people are more capable, more certain, more genuinely together than you are. They are not. They have the same full interior that you have. With the same doubts and fears and underdeveloped capacities and private discrepancies between performance and genuine reality. The only difference is that you do not have access to their interior the way you have access to yours. The Stoic practice is to compare yourself not to other people but to your own previous self. To the person you were yesterday, last month, last year. To the direction of your own development. To the question of whether you are genuinely becoming more of who you want to be, regardless of where that places you relative to the carefully curated exteriors of the people visible around you. Stop seeking permission from external sources to believe in yourself. Most people, somewhere in their interior, are waiting. Not consciously. But waiting nonetheless. For the specific external confirmation that will make the self-belief feel justified. The recognition from someone whose opinion they value. The achievement of a specific milestone that seems like the threshold of deserving genuine confidence. The arrival of circumstances sufficiently favorable to make the belief feel safe to hold. This waiting is the most complete possible expression of the outside-governed relationship with self-belief. The belief that is waiting for external permission will wait indefinitely. Because the external permission never arrives in the form that would feel sufficient. There is always a next threshold, always a higher milestone, always a more impressive recognition that would be needed before the genuine belief felt genuinely warranted. The Stoic practice is the deliberate, specific, sometimes courageous decision to stop waiting. To recognize that the permission you are seeking from the external does not exist, or rather, that it exists inside you rather than outside, and that the only way to access it is to stop looking for it in places where it was never available. Stop rehearsing the worst possible interpretation of your own past. The inner critic, the voice that reviews past failures with the specific harshness of a prosecutor rather than the honest fairness of a genuine self-examiner, is one of the most consistent and most damaging obstacles to genuine self-belief. Not because the failures it identifies are not real. They are. The honest examination of past failures is a necessary component of genuine self-knowledge and a necessary input into genuine development. But the inner critic does something that genuine honest examination does not do. It selects. It focuses on the evidence against the belief, the failures, the limitations, the specific moments where the performance and the genuine interior did not match, while systematically minimizing the evidence for it. The genuine achievements. The specific capacities that have been demonstrated. The genuine development that has occurred. The real ways in which the person who exists today is different from and more capable than the person who experienced the failures that the inner critic keeps returning to. The Stoic practice is the deliberate rebalancing. Not the suppression of the inner critic or the pretense that the failures it identifies are not real. The insistence that the examination be fair. That the evidence for genuine capability receive the same quality of attention as the evidence of genuine limitation. That the assessment of yourself be honest rather than prosecutorial. Complete rather than selectively negative. You deserve the same fair examination that you would give to someone you genuinely care about. You deserve the full picture rather than the selected negative. You deserve the honest, complete, balanced assessment that builds the specific, accurate, genuinely grounded belief in yourself that we are working toward. The compounding of genuine self-belief over time. The most important thing to understand about genuine self-belief, the thing that most distinguishes it from its performance, is how it grows over time when genuinely built. The performance of self-belief degrades. It requires continuous maintenance through external input. It depletes in the absence of validation. It weakens in the presence of genuine challenge because genuine challenge reveals the absence of the genuine foundation beneath it. And the continuous maintenance it requires, the energy spent managing the appearance of confidence, finding the external confirmation that sustains it, avoiding the genuine challenges that would expose its hollowness, this maintenance itself drains the resources that would otherwise be available for genuine development. Genuine self-belief compounds. Each kept commitment makes the next commitment more possible. Each honest encounter with difficulty builds the specific evidence of continued capacity that makes the belief in the capacity to continue more genuinely grounded. Each honest self-examination produces more accurate self-knowledge that makes the belief more precisely calibrated to what is actually real. Each act of genuine courage, choosing the value-aligned response over the comfortable one, maintaining the honest position when the comfortable one is available, adds to the specific interior evidence of who you genuinely are and what you genuinely stand for. And this compounding produces, over years of genuine practice, a quality of self-belief that is qualitatively different from anything that performance can achieve or that comfortable circumstances can provide. It is the self-belief of someone who knows themselves genuinely, completely, without the flattering distortions of the ego that inflates and the inner critic that deflates. With the honest, fair, complete picture of what is actually there, the strengths and the limitations, the developed capacities and the areas where development is still needed, the values and the degree to which the choices have honored them. And from that complete, honest picture, this person has made a specific and genuine assessment: I am enough. Not perfect. Not unlimited. Not guaranteed to succeed at everything I attempt or to navigate every difficulty without genuine struggle. But genuinely enough for the navigation of what comes. For the meeting of genuine difficulty with genuine capacity. For the living of a life that is genuinely, authoritatively, completely mine. This is what Paul found. Not because 3 years of rebuilding had made him more externally impressive than the 23 years of professional success. But because 3 years of genuine interior work had built something that the 23 years of comfortable success had never required him to build. A genuine belief in Paul. Not in what Paul had achieved. Not in what Paul was recognized for. Not in what the comfortable circumstances of a stable career had provided and confirmed. In Paul. In the person who was present in that home office on that Tuesday afternoon. In the person who had the capacity, however undeveloped, however genuinely challenged, however genuinely uncertain about the shape of the future, to meet what came with the interior resources required to continue. That Paul believed in. Not because the external confirmed it. Because the internal, honestly examined, genuinely known, specifically grounded in values and demonstrated through kept commitments and developed through deliberate challenge, because that interior, seen clearly, was genuinely sufficient. This is available to you. Not through affirmation. Not through the performance of confidence. Not through the avoidance of honest examination. Through the daily, honest, demanding, ultimately irreplaceable practice of genuinely knowing yourself and genuinely trusting what you find. The beginning of genuine belief. Tomorrow morning, before the external world begins providing the confirmation or the contradiction that your current relationship with self-belief is dependent on, before the news and the notifications and the social inputs and the professional demands, before all of that, spend a few genuine minutes with the most important questions available. Not, am I good enough? That question is the inner critic's question. It produces the inner critic's answer. But, what do I actually know is present in me, right now, that I have not been fully trusting? What genuine capacity, what actual value, what real commitment to something that matters, what of this have I been understating in the ongoing internal assessment I have been conducting about myself? And, what is one commitment I can make to myself today, small, specific, entirely private, that I will keep? Not because keeping it will change the external circumstances. But because the keeping of it will add one more sentence to the story that the genuine self-belief is built from. One more piece of evidence that I am someone who does what I say I will do. One more deposit into the account of demonstrated reliability that is the only account genuine self-belief can be genuinely drawn from. And then keep it. In the private, unwitnessed, unremarked upon way that all the most important commitments are kept. Not for the external audience. For yourself. For the developing relationship with yourself that genuine belief in yourself requires and produces and deepens over time. Paul kept his commitments during those 3 years in exactly this way. Quietly. Without external audience. Without the confirmation from the industry that had previously provided the validation. Simply because the commitments were his and the keeping of them was the expression of who he had decided he was. And the keeping built something that the comfortable success never had. Something that the 3 years of difficulty could not take. Something that has held in every condition since and will hold in every condition to come. A genuine belief in himself. Not conditional. Not dependent. Not waiting for the world to provide what the interior can only provide for itself. Genuine. Grounded. Built. Yours to build in exactly the same way. Subscribe to Stoic Ascension right now. Turn on your notifications. Every single video on this channel is built for exactly this depth of genuine philosophical work and genuine practical application. The philosophy that changes not what you know about yourself but who you are in the private moments when the external has stopped providing what you needed it to provide. What comes after this builds directly on everything you just heard. Every video goes deeper. Every video takes the practice further into the specific work of becoming the person you are genuinely capable of being. The world will not always cooperate. The circumstances will not always be favorable. The external confirmation will not always be available. But you, the genuine you, honestly known, honestly trusted, honestly developed through the specific practices of a life that takes itself seriously, you will always be there. Believe in that person. Build that belief. Begin today. Master clear thinking. The bridge was structurally sound. Every engineer who reviewed it said so. The calculations had been checked. The materials met the specifications. The construction had followed the approved plans with meticulous precision. The team responsible for building it was experienced, credentialed, and thorough. Every formal review had passed. Every checklist had been completed. And 3 months after it opened, it collapsed. The subsequent investigation did not reveal a flaw in the engineering. It revealed a flaw in the thinking that had produced the engineering. Specifically, it revealed that the lead engineer on the project had made a single assumption in the early stages of the design, an assumption about the soil composition of the riverbed, that had never been directly verified. An assumption that seemed so reasonable, so consistent with every other project of this type in this region, that no one on the team had thought to question it. It was wrong. Not catastrophically wrong. Slightly wrong. Wrong enough that the small additional stress it produced in a specific joint, accumulated over months of normal use, produced a failure that the technically sound engineering built on top of it could not prevent. The engineer was not unintelligent. He was not careless in any normal sense of the word. He had not cut corners or ignored evidence or made reckless guesses. He had done everything that professional competence and technical expertise required. What he had not done was think clearly about his thinking. He had not examined his assumptions before building on them. He had not asked the most important question available at the beginning of any significant intellectual project: what am I assuming here, and how do I actually know that it is true? His name was never made public. The investigation was sensitive and the findings confidential. But the story traveled among engineers as a specific kind of cautionary tale. Not about technical failure. About thinking failure. About the way that intelligent, trained, experienced people can construct elaborate and technically sound structures on foundations that were never genuinely examined. The bridge was the visible structure. The unexamined assumption was the invisible foundation. And the invisible foundation, when it gave way, took everything built on top of it with it. This happens in engineering. It happens in business. It happens in relationships. It happens in the daily decisions of ordinary lives in ways that are less dramatic and less immediately visible but no less real in their cumulative consequence. Unexamined thinking, the assumptions we never questioned, the biases we never identified, the patterns of reasoning that feel completely sound because we have never applied genuine scrutiny to them, builds the foundations of everything we decide and everything we build. And the quality of those foundations determines, more than any other single factor, the quality of what is built on them. This is what we are exploring today. Not intelligence. Not knowledge. Not the accumulation of information that modern culture consistently mistakes for thinking. The specific, demanding, irreplaceable discipline of actually thinking clearly. Of examining the assumptions, identifying the biases, applying the scrutiny, and building on foundations that have been genuinely tested rather than conveniently assumed. This is Stoic Ascension. Subscribe to this channel right now and turn on your notifications because every single video here is built for exactly this level of depth and precision. The philosophy, the practice, and the complete transformation of how you engage with your own mind. What comes after this builds directly on everything you are about to hear. Do not miss what is coming. Why most people never actually think clearly, and why they do not know it. The most unsettling truth about unclear thinking is this: it feels exactly like clear thinking from the inside. The person who is reasoning from unexamined assumptions does not experience a sensation of muddiness or distortion. They experience the same confidence, the same sense of following a logical path from evidence to conclusion, the same interior conviction of having genuinely thought something through, as the person whose thinking is genuinely clear. The feeling of clarity is not evidence of clarity. The feeling of having thought something through is not evidence of having thought it through. The confidence with which a conclusion is held is not evidence of the soundness of the reasoning that produced it. This is one of the most challenging things about the human mind: it generates the experience of clear thinking independently of whether clear thinking is actually occurring. It produces the sensation of having followed the evidence wherever it leads, even when it has actually been following prior beliefs and confirming them selectively. It produces the feeling of open-minded genuine inquiry even when the inquiry was constrained from the beginning by assumptions that were never identified, let alone examined. The Stoics understood this dynamic with extraordinary precision. And their response to it was not the counsel of perpetual uncertainty, not the paralyzing suggestion that because clear thinking is difficult it cannot be achieved. Their response was the development of specific, daily, concrete practices for examining the thinking behind the thinking. For making visible the assumptions that operate invisibly. For identifying the biases that distort without announcing their presence. Epictetus taught that the person who has not examined their own reasoning processes has not begun to think. That the examination of thinking is the prerequisite for genuine thinking. That the person who believes they are thinking clearly while never examining how they think is in a condition of philosophical self-deception that no amount of intelligence or knowledge can compensate for. Marcus Aurelius returned repeatedly in his private journals to the practice of examining his own mind. Not just his conclusions, his process. Not just what he believed, the reasoning by which he had arrived at the belief. He treated his own thinking as an object of study, not just as the instrument of study. And this treatment, this metacognitive discipline of watching the thinking while thinking, produced the specific quality of philosophical clarity that his journals exhibit 2,000 years later. The path to mastering clear thinking begins not with the acquisition of more information but with the honest examination of the processes through which existing information is currently being used. Not with becoming smarter but with becoming more honest about how the smart you think is currently constrained by patterns it has not yet identified. What genuinely clear thinking requires: the Stoic framework. The Stoics built a comprehensive framework for clear thinking that was both philosophically sophisticated and practically applicable. It was not primarily a set of logical rules. It was a set of interior disciplines, habits of mind that, practiced consistently, produced the specific quality of thinking that the Stoics identified as the foundation of genuine wisdom. This framework rests on several distinct but deeply connected elements. Each one is necessary. None is sufficient alone. Together, They constitute what might be called the complete architecture of a genuinely clear-thinking mind. The first element is the ruthless distinction between what you know and what you assume. In any significant decision, any important judgment, any situation that requires genuine thinking, there are things you actually know, things that are grounded in direct evidence, in verified experience, in sources of information that you have reason to trust, and there are things you assume. Things that seem so reasonable, so consistent with your prior experience, so apparently obvious that they have been elevated to the status of knowledge without actually going through the verification process that knowledge requires. The failure to make this distinction, the habitual treatment of assumptions as if they were knowledge, is the most universal source of thinking error available. It is what the bridge engineer did. It is what intelligent people in failed relationships do when they assume they understand their partner's experience without genuinely asking. It is what smart professionals do when they assume the market works the way it has always worked without examining whether the current situation might be different. It is what careful thinkers do when they assume their own reasoning is sound without examining it. The Stoic practice for this element is the discipline of explicitly labeling what is assumption. Not as a permanent qualification that paralyzes action, genuine decisions must be made with incomplete information, and the Stoics were clear-eyed about this reality. But as a practice of intellectual honesty about the epistemic status of what you are building on. The deliberate, regular habit of asking, am I treating this as established when it is actually assumed? And if it is assumed, how confident should I be in it, and what is the cost of being wrong? These questions change everything about the quality of the thinking that follows. Because the person who knows they are building on an assumption approaches the building differently from the person who believes they are building on established fact. They monitor more carefully. They update more readily. They hold the structure of their thinking more lightly and more revisably. And they are therefore far less likely to build the elaborate technical superstructure that makes the hidden assumption's eventual failure catastrophic. The second element is the identification and examination of cognitive bias. The human mind does not process information neutrally. It never has. The brain is not a passive recording device that simply registers what is real and reports it accurately. It is an active, interpretive, pattern-completing system that has evolved for specific purposes that have very little to do with accuracy in the philosophical sense. The result is that certain kinds of errors appear consistently across virtually all human minds, in virtually all cultures, in virtually all conditions. Systematic tendencies to process information in ways that feel accurate but that diverge from the most accurate available assessment in consistent and predictable directions. The Stoics did not use the modern vocabulary of cognitive bias. But they identified the phenomena that the vocabulary describes with remarkable precision. They identified what we now call confirmation bias, the systematic tendency to seek, notice, remember, and weight information that confirms what we already believe while doing the opposite for information that challenges it. Epictetus addressed this directly when he taught students to actively seek the evidence against their current positions, not just the evidence for them. That the person who only looks for confirmation of what they already believe has removed the primary mechanism by which error is identified and corrected. They identified what we now call status quo bias, the systematic tendency to prefer existing conditions over potential alternatives, regardless of the genuine relative merits, simply because the existing conditions are familiar and the alternatives involve uncertainty. Marcus Aurelius wrote about the need to examine whether current practices were genuinely good or merely habitual. Whether they continued because they served or because they had always been. They identified what we now call the sunk cost fallacy, the systematic tendency to give undue weight to what has already been invested when evaluating whether to continue with a course of action. Seneca wrote about the need to evaluate each situation as it currently stands rather than through the filter of what had already been spent to arrive there. And they identified what we now call authority bias, the systematic tendency to accept the conclusions of authoritative figures without applying the same critical examination that would be applied to the claims of a non-authority. The Stoics were notably resistant to accepting conclusions because of the status of who delivered them rather than because of the quality of the reasoning and evidence that supported them. These biases do not disappear through the identification of them. The research on cognitive bias is clear on this point. Knowing that a bias exists does not, by itself, eliminate its influence on your thinking. The identification is necessary but not sufficient. What the identification makes possible is the deliberate counteraction, the specific practice, applied at the specific points where the specific bias is most active, of doing the opposite of what the bias would naturally produce. Seeking the disconfirming evidence when confirmation bias pulls toward only seeking confirmation. Examining alternatives with genuine openness when status quo bias pulls toward assuming the current arrangement is optimal. Evaluating the genuine forward-looking merits of a situation when sunk cost pulls toward the backward-looking weight of prior investment. This counteraction, practiced consistently and specifically, is one of the most powerful improvements to thinking quality available to any person willing to do it. The third element is the discipline of holding multiple competing frameworks simultaneously. Most people think about complex situations through a single framework. The framework that was culturally transmitted to them, or that they developed through their specific professional training, or that has worked well enough in past situations to have become their default lens. The problem with single framework thinking is not that the framework is necessarily wrong. It is that the framework is necessarily incomplete. Every framework for understanding a complex situation captures some of what is real and misses some of what is real. The question is not whether a given framework is accurate. Every useful framework is accurate in some domains and for some purposes. The question is whether the framework is sufficient for the specific situation being examined. And the answer, for any genuinely complex situation, is almost always, not alone. The framework captures part of what is real. What it misses is captured by other frameworks. And the thinker who has access to multiple frameworks, who can look at the same situation through the economic lens and the psychological lens and the systemic lens and the historical lens and hold all of them simultaneously, has access to a more complete picture of what is actually happening than any single framework thinker can achieve. Marcus Aurelius practiced this with deliberate consistency. When facing a significant decision, he would explicitly consider multiple perspectives, the philosophical perspective, the strategic perspective, the human and relational perspective, the historical perspective of what similar situations had produced in the past. Not to be paralyzed by the multiplicity but to triangulate toward the most accurate available assessment of what was actually real and what the available choices were genuinely likely to produce. This practice of deliberate multi-framework engagement is one of the most powerful cognitive habits available. And it requires exactly the kind of specific cultivation that any other powerful habit requires, the deliberate, regular practice of asking, when examining any significant situation, what would this look like through a completely different framework from the one I have been using? What does the perspective I am not naturally inclined toward reveal that my natural perspective has been missing? The enemies of clear thinking, specific patterns that must be identified and addressed. Understanding the framework of clear thinking is necessary. But the practice requires also the honest identification of the specific enemies, the interior patterns and exterior pressures that consistently compromise clear thinking in the specific conditions of actual lives. The enemy of emotional urgency. When something feels urgent, when the emotional charge of a situation is high, when the stakes feel enormous and the time feels short, the quality of thinking reliably decreases. Not because intelligence is reduced by emotion, but because the cognitive resources that accurate thinking requires are partially redirected toward the emotional management that the urgency demands. This is the condition in which the worst decisions are most reliably made. And most of the significant decisions in most people's lives are made in exactly this condition. The relationship decision made in the heat of conflict. The financial decision made in the grip of fear or greed. The professional decision made under the pressure of an artificial deadline. The personal decision made in the specific emotional state that the circumstances were designed to produce. The Stoic practice for this enemy is the discipline of the deliberate delay. Not permanent deferral, that is the risk aversion pattern that the sign of weakness discussion identified. The specific, targeted delay of major decisions until the emotional urgency has subsided enough for the full cognitive function to re-engage. Seneca wrote, "The first remedy for anger is delay." The same principle applies to every form of emotional urgency. Not because the emotion is wrong. Not because what produced the urgency is not genuinely important. But because the quality of thinking available in the acute emotional state is reliably inferior to the quality available after the acute state has subsided. And the difference in thinking quality is almost always more consequential than whatever was lost in the delay. The enemy of social pressure. Human beings are social creatures. The need to belong, to be accepted, to maintain the approval and connection of the group, this is wired at a level that does not respond gracefully to philosophical instruction about independent thinking. The pressure to agree, to conform, to bring your expressed positions into alignment with those of the people around you is genuinely powerful. And it operates largely below the level of conscious awareness. The result is that in many social situations, what feels like independent thinking is actually the convergence of your expressed thinking with the social environment's expected conclusions, a convergence that happened before you were fully aware it was happening. You arrived at the conclusion that the group expected. You felt the process of arriving there as independent reasoning. But the independence was partially illusory, compromised by social pressure that operated faster and more comprehensively than your conscious awareness could track. The Stoic practice for this enemy is the discipline of the private examination. Before sharing any significant conclusion in a social context, examine it privately first. Write it down. Test it against the best available evidence and the most honest available counterarguments in the absence of the social pressure that the sharing context would generate. Arrive at your genuine position before exposing it to the environment that would reshape it. And in group contexts, in meetings, in conversations, in any setting where consensus is forming, develop the specific practice of explicitly asking yourself, is what I am about to say my genuine assessment, or has it been shaped by the social environment in ways that my honest private examination would not have produced? The enemy of narrative seduction. The human mind is fundamentally a story-making machine. It does not process information as raw data. It processes information by constructing narratives, coherent stories that explain what is happening and why, that connect events into causal sequences, that create the feeling of understanding through the experience of narrative coherence. This narrative-making capacity is one of the most powerful and most useful things the human mind does. Narratives make sense of complexity. They make experience manageable. They allow the lessons of one situation to be applied to apparently similar situations through the recognition of familiar patterns. But they also seduce. The compelling narrative, the one that is internally coherent, emotionally resonant, and consistent with prior beliefs, produces the feeling of understanding even when the narrative is incomplete, inaccurate, or selected from the available evidence in ways that a more honest process would not have produced. Confirmation bias and narrative seduction work together. The compelling narrative is confirmed by the evidence that fits it, while the evidence that does not fit is minimized or reinterpreted or simply not noticed. And the result is a thinking process that feels like genuine engagement with what is real but that is actually the construction of an internally coherent story from selectively gathered evidence. The Stoic practice for this enemy is the discipline of deliberate deconstruction. The regular practice of taking a significant belief, a narrative about why something happened, what a person is like, what a situation means, and deliberately separating the evidence from the interpretation. Asking, what are the actual facts here, stripped of the story I have built around them? And does the story follow necessarily from those facts, or have I selected the facts to fit a story that I had reason to prefer? This deconstruction is uncomfortable. The narratives that are most seductive are usually the ones that are most identity protective, most approval generating, most consistent with the self-image that the thinking has been built to maintain. Pulling them apart requires a willingness to find something you would prefer not to find, the specific place where the evidence does not support the narrative as completely as the narrative has led you to believe. But the willingness to find this, the genuine intellectual courage to deconstruct the compelling story and see what the evidence actually says when the story is set aside, is one of the most powerful cognitive capacities available. Because the person who can do this is not trapped by their own narratives. They can see through them to what is actually real. And seeing what is actually real is the beginning of everything else that thinking is supposed to produce. The enemy of false certainty. There is a specific kind of intellectual comfort that is both deeply satisfying and deeply dangerous. The comfort of certainty. The experience of having resolved a question, of having arrived at a clear, settled, no longer requiring attention conclusion, that produces the specific relief of a mind that has been able to stop working on something. This comfort is completely legitimate when the certainty is genuine. When the evidence is comprehensive, the reasoning is sound, the conclusion has been genuinely tested and has held, arriving at certainty and experiencing the relief of it is appropriate. It is the mind doing exactly what good thinking should do, working on a question until the question is genuinely resolved. The problem is false certainty. The experience of the same cognitive comfort from conclusions that have not been genuinely tested. The premature closure of questions that deserved more examination. The specific experience of having decided that a question is settled that has actually been declared settled primarily because continued examination would have been uncomfortable. The Stoics had a term for this, dogmatism. The condition of a mind that has elevated its current conclusions to the status of settled truth not because they have earned that status through genuine examination but because the person holding them has a specific investment in not having to continue examining them. The antidote is not the perpetual uncertainty that makes all conclusions permanently provisional, that is a different and equally problematic extreme. The antidote is the honest calibration of confidence to the actual strength of the evidence and the quality of the reasoning. The practice of holding conclusions with exactly the confidence they have earned and no more. Of being genuinely willing to have them challenged and of finding in the challenge not a threat but an opportunity to discover whether they hold under scrutiny. The practice of first principles thinking, the most powerful tool available. Of all the specific practices that produce clear thinking, first principles thinking is the one that the Stoics, and subsequently every thinker who has genuinely mastered clear thinking, identified as the most powerful and the most consistently underused. First principles thinking is the practice of reducing any complex question, any belief, any conclusion, any plan of action, to its most fundamental and most verifiable components. Of stripping away the assumptions, the analogies, the conventional wisdom, the expert opinion, the accumulated inherited knowledge about how things work, until you arrive at the things that are most directly verifiable. And then building up from those genuinely verified foundations rather than from the elaborate structure of assumptions that typically substitutes for them. Most people think by analogy. This is similar to something I have encountered before. This works the same way as that. The principles that applied there should apply here. Analogical thinking is fast, efficient, and often approximately correct. It is how the human mind manages the complexity of experience without being overwhelmed by having to rederive everything from scratch. But analogical thinking is also where most significant thinking errors originate. Because the analogy is an assumption. The similarity between this situation and that one is asserted rather than verified. The principles that applied there are borrowed rather than tested for their applicability here. And these borrowings, stacked on top of each other across the layers of a significant conclusion, produced the same kind of structural vulnerability that the bridge engineer's unexamined soil assumption produced. The alternative is the specific discipline of asking, for any significant belief or conclusion, what would I need to know to be genuinely confident in this? Not what have I heard, not what do people in my field assume, not what seems obviously true given my prior experience, but what would genuine, direct evidence of this look like, and do I have it? This question, asked with genuine intellectual honesty, consistently reveals the assumptions that have been mistaken for knowledge. And the revelation, however uncomfortable, is the beginning of the genuine thinking that the analogical thinking was substituting for. Marcus Aurelius practiced first principles thinking about questions that most people in his position would have answered analogically. He did not ask, "What have emperors before me done in this situation?" He asked, "What is actually required here, and what do I actually know about the situation that would ground a genuine answer to that requirement?" The distinction produced decisions that the analogical approach would not have generated. And many of those decisions are still being studied as examples of genuine wisdom applied to genuine complexity. The practice requires, first, the patience to slow down. First principles thinking is considerably slower than analogical thinking. It requires the deliberate examination of foundations that analogical thinking simply accepts. And in a world that consistently rewards speed and penalizes the appearance of uncertainty, the patience to do this work is itself a form of intellectual courage. But the speed that analogical thinking provides is the speed of movement on potentially unsound foundations. First principles thinking is slower at the beginning and more reliable at the end. The bridge that takes longer to design because every assumption is examined does not collapse. The role of questions in clear thinking, and why most people ask the wrong ones. The quality of your thinking is determined to a very large extent by the quality of the questions you are asking. Not the questions you direct at other people. The questions you direct at the situations you encounter, the conclusions you hold, and the reasoning processes you use to arrive at them. Most people ask questions that are designed to confirm. To find the support for what they already believe. To build the case for the conclusion they have already reached. These questions feel like genuine inquiry, they are phrased as questions, they produce information, the person asking them experiences the process of asking and answering them as thinking. But they are not genuine inquiry. They are confirmation seeking wearing inquiry's clothing. The Stoics identified the questions that produce genuine thinking. They are the questions that are designed not to confirm but to test. Not to support but to challenge. Not to find the evidence for the conclusion but to find the best available evidence against it. What is the strongest possible argument against my current position? Not what is the weakest argument against it, the one that is easiest to dismiss. The strongest. The one that, if sound, would require the most significant revision of what I currently believe. What would I have to observe to change my mind about this? Not what would have to happen for me to abandon the conclusion entirely, but what specific evidence, what specific development, what specific finding would produce a genuine revision of the confidence with which I hold this belief? What am I not looking at here? What evidence, what perspective, what framework, what category of information have I not yet engaged with that might be relevant to this conclusion? And most powerfully, what is this situation most importantly not like? Because analogical thinking finds the similarities that make the current situation seem familiar. The question of what the situation is most importantly not like forces attention to the differences, to the ways in which the current situation does not fit the familiar pattern, to the ways in which the analogically borrowed principles might not apply, to the ways in which the bridge's soil might be different from every other bridge's soil that the engineer has worked with. These questions are uncomfortable. They are designed to be. The comfort of the questioning process is itself evidence that the questions are not doing their work. Genuine inquiry is genuinely uncomfortable because genuine inquiry is designed to find what is wrong with what you currently believe. And finding what is wrong is never comfortable. But it is always, in the long run, better than not finding it. The bridge engineer would have preferred the discomfort of discovering his soil assumption was wrong before the bridge was built to the more comprehensive discomfort that the alternative produced. The Stoic practice of examining your own mind, the daily discipline. The Stoics did not treat clear thinking as an ability to be developed once and then possessed permanently. They treated it as a practice to be maintained continuously, through the daily habits of a mind that is actively working to remain genuinely honest with itself. The morning practice of clear thinking is the deliberate examination of what you believe before the day begins providing the evidence that confirms it. The brief, honest, structured inventory of the major conclusions you are currently operating from and the honest assessment of how well-grounded each of them genuinely is. Not a long process. Not an elaborate philosophical exercise. A few minutes of genuine honesty about the difference between what you know and what you assume. About the specific conclusions that you are currently most invested in and that therefore most require deliberate examination of the counter-evidence. This practice does not produce uncertainty. It produces appropriate calibration. The conclusions that survive honest morning examination are held with justified confidence. The conclusions that do not survive it, that are revealed by the honest examination to be more assumption than knowledge, are held more lightly, with the specific openness to revision that their epistemic status genuinely warrants. Throughout the day, the practice of the thinking pause. Before any significant conclusion is acted on, the brief, deliberate interruption that asks, have I thought this through with the honesty that it requires? Have I examined the assumptions? Have I looked at the counter-evidence? Have I asked what this situation is most importantly not like the situations my analogical thinking is comparing it to? This pause is not always possible. Some decisions must be made faster than genuine examination can be completed. The Stoics accepted this reality. What they demanded was that the decisions made under time pressure be explicitly recognized as such, that they be held with the appropriate tentativeness of conclusions that were reached without the examination they would have ideally received. And that they be revisited and revised when time allowed. The evening practice of thinking examination is the review of the significant thinking you did during the day. The honest assessment of where the thinking was genuine, where the examination was honest, the assumptions were identified, the counter-evidence was genuinely considered, and where the thinking was more performance than substance. Where you concluded before you examined. Where you confirmed before you genuinely inquired. This review is not designed to produce shame at the thinking failures it reveals. It is designed to produce the specific information about where the thinking habits most need deliberate work. Because thinking clearly is not a natural default. It is a practice. And like all practices, it improves in the specific places where it is deliberately applied, and remains undeveloped in the places where it is not. What clear thinking produces, the compounding advantage. The benefits of mastering clear thinking are not immediate and dramatic. They are gradual and compounding. They accumulate over months and years into an advantage that is both more durable and more comprehensive than the advantages that other kinds of development produce. The person who thinks more clearly makes better decisions. Not occasionally. Systematically. Because the specific improvement in the quality of the thinking process, the identification and examination of assumptions, the counteraction of specific biases, the deliberate engagement with multiple frameworks, the use of first principles, the quality of the questions asked, these improvements apply to every significant decision rather than to specific domains. They are a general upgrade to the decision-making process rather than an improvement in specific areas. And better decisions, made systematically over time, compound in their effects. The career built on consistently clearer thinking about opportunities and risks. The relationships built on consistently clearer thinking about what is actually happening versus what the self-protective narrative would prefer to be happening. The financial decisions made on clearer thinking about what is genuinely known versus what is assumed. Each good decision creates conditions that make the next good decision more possible. The advantage compounds. Clear thinking also produces a specific quality of genuine understanding that the performance of intelligence cannot match. The person who thinks clearly, who has genuinely examined the foundations of what they believe, who has genuinely engaged with the strongest counterarguments, who has genuinely applied multiple frameworks to complex situations, this person understands things in a way that the person who has accumulated information without this examination does not. They understand the limits of what they know. They understand the specific conditions under which their conclusions hold and the specific conditions under which they might fail. They understand the difference between what the evidence actually supports and what they would prefer it to support. This understanding, this genuine epistemic humility grounded in genuine examination, is both more accurate and more useful than the confident certainty of the person who has not examined their thinking. And it produces a quality of credibility that the confident certainty cannot match over time. Because the person who understands the limits of their knowledge is far less likely to be catastrophically wrong in the ways that damage trust. They update when the evidence demands updating. They revise when the examination reveals the revision is warranted. They are, in the most fundamental sense, more trustworthy than the person whose confidence is inversely proportional to their genuine examination of the foundations on which it rests. The beginning of mastery, what to do tomorrow morning. Here is what genuine mastery of clear thinking requires from you practically. Not as an abstract aspiration but as a specific, concrete, actionable practice that begins tomorrow morning and continues every morning after that. Before you check anything. Before the external world begins providing you with the information that will confirm what you already believe, the news that will trigger the emotional responses that cloud thinking, the social inputs that will begin the pressure toward conformity, before all of that, spend a small amount of time with the questions that genuine thinking requires. Ask yourself, what am I assuming today that I have not genuinely verified? In the major areas of your life, the professional direction, the key relationships, the financial decisions, the plans you are building, where are you treating as established what is actually assumed? Ask yourself, what would change my mind about the thing I am most certain about right now? If the honest answer is nothing, if you cannot identify any evidence or reasoning that would produce genuine revision of your most confidently held belief, that is a specific and important signal. Not that the belief is wrong, but that the confidence with which it is held exceeds what genuine examination has warranted. Ask yourself, what am I not looking at? What category of information, what perspective, what framework, what evidence have I been consistently not engaging with that might be relevant to the major decisions and directions of my life? And then, this is the practice that makes all the others real, act on what the examination reveals. If it reveals an unexamined assumption, examine it. If it reveals a conclusion held with more confidence than the evidence warrants, adjust the confidence. If it reveals a perspective that deserves engagement, engage with it. The Stoics were not interested in philosophy as a theoretical exercise. They were interested in it as a living practice, as the daily, concrete, practical application of genuine wisdom to the specific situations of actual lives. And clear thinking, in the Stoic framework, is not an intellectual virtue to be admired from a distance. It is a daily discipline to be practiced in the specific, real, consequential moments of a life that is being actively lived. The bridge engineer needed someone to ask the question before the bridge was built. To ask, how do we actually know the soil composition? Not as doubt of the engineer's competence. As the specific practice of the person who understands that the most important time to identify an unexamined assumption is before you build something significant on top of it. You are building something significant. You have been building it your entire life. Every major decision, every significant relationship, every professional direction, every understanding of yourself and the world, all of it is built on foundations. And the quality of those foundations, whether they have been genuinely examined or conveniently assumed, is the single most consequential factor in determining the quality of what is built on them. Examine the foundations. Not once. Daily. With the specific practices of genuine inquiry, honest assumption identification, deliberate bias counteraction, multi-framework engagement, and first principles analysis that we have covered today. Build what is worth building on ground that will hold it. Subscribe to Stoic Ascension right now. Turn on your notifications. Every single video on this channel is built for exactly this level of depth and practical precision. The philosophy, the practice, the complete transformation of how you engage with your own mind, your decisions, your understanding of what is actually real. What comes after this builds directly on everything you just heard. Every video goes deeper. Every video takes the practice further into the specific dimensions of a genuinely examined life. Most people think they think clearly. The bridge engineers thought so too. The difference between the person who actually thinks clearly and the one who merely experiences the feeling of it is not intelligence. It is not education. It is not access to more information. It is the practice. The specific, daily, genuinely demanding practice of examining the thinking behind the thinking. That practice begins tomorrow morning. With the question you have been avoiding. Ask it. Relax, everything starts in your mind. The surgery was successful. The patient did not know that yet. She was lying in the recovery room, drifting in and out of consciousness, and in the specific suspended quality of the space between anesthesia and full awareness, she was experiencing something that the surgical team would later describe, with the specific bewilderment of people trained to measure only what they can see, as remarkable. Her vitals were calm. Not the slightly elevated calm of a person who is sedated. The deep, stable, genuinely settled calm of a person who is at genuine peace with what is happening to them. Her heart rate was steady. Her blood pressure was lower than it had been in the preoperative assessment. Her breathing was slow and even and entirely without the quality of fight that the body usually maintains even in unconsciousness when it is in circumstances of significant physiological stress. The nurse who monitored her recovery would say afterward that in 12 years of post-operative care, she had rarely seen anything like it. Her name was Elena. She was 56 years old. She had spent the previous 3 months preparing for the surgery, not in the way that most people prepare for surgery, with the specific anxiety of someone who is trying to think their way around a thing they cannot control, trying to plan their way past the uncertainty, trying to somehow manage through mental effort the outcome that was entirely in the hands of others. She had spent the 3 months doing something that most people would not recognize as preparation at all. She had been practicing her mind. Not meditation in the popular sense. Not the performance of calm. The specific, daily, philosophically grounded practice of examining and redirecting the relationship between her mind and the circumstances she was navigating. The practice of distinguishing what she could influence from what she could not. Of meeting what she could not control with acceptance rather than resistance. of directing the full weight of her attention and energy toward what was genuinely available to her, the quality of her own interior, the honesty of her own engagement with the situation, the care with which she maintained the relationships she loved, and releasing, with genuine completeness, everything that was not available to her. She had been reading the Stoics. Specifically, she had been reading Epictetus, whose particular authority on the subject of meeting genuinely difficult circumstances with genuine interior freedom came from having lived it rather than merely having written about it. She had understood something that most people who encounter life-altering medical circumstances do not understand because they have not had the specific philosophical education that makes understanding it possible. The surgery would happen as it would happen. The outcome would be what it would be. The body's response to the procedure, the surgeon's skill, the thousand unpredictable variables that determine whether a surgery of this kind produces the desired result, none of this was hers to govern. None of it lived on her side of the line. What lived on her side of the line was her mind. The quality of the 3 months between the diagnosis and the procedure. The character of her engagement with the people she loved during those months. The honesty with which she faced the possibility of difficult outcomes. The peace, genuine and practiced rather than performed and brittle, with which she entered the operating room. The surgery was successful. And the recovery was remarkable. Not because the surgical outcome was correlated with her mental state, though there is genuine research suggesting that it may have been. But because the 3 months that preceded it were lived rather than merely endured. Were genuinely inhabited by a person who had understood, through genuine philosophical practice, that the quality of her experience of those months was not determined by the surgery's outcome but by the quality of her own mind meeting those months as they actually were. She had relaxed into what she could not control. And in the relaxing, the genuine, philosophically grounded, daily practiced relaxing, she had freed every available interior resource for the actual living of the actual life she had in front of her. This is what we are exploring today. Completely. Without the comfortable shortcuts that make the exploration feel inspiring but leave the practice undone. This is Stoic Ascension. Subscribe to this channel right now and turn on your notifications because every single video here is built for exactly this level of depth and genuine application. The philosophy, the practice, and the complete transformation of the relationship between your mind and your experience of everything that happens to you. What comes after this builds directly on everything you are about to hear. Do not miss what is coming. What it actually means that everything starts in your mind. This phrase has become so familiar in motivational culture that most people hear it and nod without genuinely examining what it actually claims. And the examination is worth doing, because the claim is more radical and more practically important than the nodding acknowledgement of it suggests. Everything starts in your mind does not mean that your thoughts create reality. It does not mean that positive thinking produces positive outcomes or that the correct mental attitude determines external events. The Stoics were not magical thinkers. They were among the most clear-eyed realists in philosophical history. They understood that the world operates according to its own principles, that outcomes are determined by far more than any individual's mental state, and that the suggestion that thinking the right thoughts produces the right circumstances is both philosophically naive and practically dangerous. What it does mean, what the Stoic philosophical tradition has built its entire understanding of human experience on, is something considerably more specific and considerably more verifiable. Your experience of everything that happens to you starts in your mind. Not the external events themselves. The experience of them. The meaning they carry. The weight they produce in your interior. The suffering or the peace or the anger or the equanimity that accompanies the encounter with whatever the world delivers. None of this, not one element of it, is determined by the external event itself. Every element of it is determined by the mind that meets the event. By the specific interpretations the mind assigns, the stories it constructs, the meanings it generates from the raw material of the external occurrence. Two people receive the same piece of difficult news. One person collapses into a weeks-long depression. The other person feels the genuine weight of the difficulty, processes it honestly, and continues with their life. The news was identical. The internal experience was completely different. Not because the two people have different pain thresholds. Because the minds meeting the news were producing different experiences from the same external input. This is what Epictetus was pointing at when he wrote that it is not things that disturb us but our opinions about things. The thing, the event, the circumstance, the external occurrence, is what it is. It is neutral in the specific sense that it contains no inherent psychological meaning. All psychological meaning is added by the mind that encounters it. And the mind that adds the meaning is the mind that determines the experience. This recognition is the beginning of genuine psychological freedom. Not freedom from difficult events. They will arrive. Not freedom from genuine pain. Pain is real and honest. But freedom from the additional, unnecessary, self-generated suffering that the undisciplined mind adds to every difficult event through the specific interpretations it applies. Elena understood this. She could not prevent the surgery from being necessary. She could not guarantee its outcome. She could not control what the surgeon's hands would do or what the body's response would be. But she could control, genuinely, completely, and through deliberate daily practice, the quality of the mind that was meeting all of this. And the quality of that mind was the quality of her experience of the 3 months that preceded the surgery. Everything that she experienced during those 3 months started in her mind. And her mind, deliberately tended, produced something that the surgery could not provide and the outcome could not determine. Genuine peace. The Stoic understanding of the mind as the source of experience. The Stoics built their entire philosophy on a recognition of the mind's primacy in the generation of human experience. Not as a mystical claim about the relationship between consciousness and reality. As a precise, philosophically grounded, directly verifiable observation about the structure of human psychological life. Marcus Aurelius expressed it with the directness that characterizes his private journals: the universe is change, our life is what our thoughts make it. Not our circumstances. Not our external situation. Our thoughts. The specific, continuously generated interpretive activity of the mind that meets whatever the universe delivers and determines, through the interpretations it assigns, what that delivery means to the person receiving it. He wrote this not as the comfortable philosophical position of someone theorizing in pleasant conditions. He wrote it as the hard-won practical understanding of someone navigating the specific demands of governing an empire during a period of war, plague, political betrayal, and personal loss. Someone who had encountered, at enormous scale, the full range of what the universe delivers to human beings who have made themselves visible enough to receive it. And what he had discovered, through direct experience rather than theoretical reflection, was the specific truth that the statement encapsulates. That the empire's difficulties, however genuine, however significant, however far beyond his individual control, did not determine the quality of his own interior experience. That the quality of his interior experience was determined, always, by the quality of the mind that was meeting the difficulties. By the interpretations being assigned, the meanings being generated, the stories being constructed around the raw material of events that were themselves neither good nor bad until the mind made them into something. Seneca wrote about this from the perspective of someone who had experienced the full range of external fortune, from the heights of wealth and influence and imperial favor to the depths of exile and threatened execution and the specific daily anxiety of living under the power of a man who had already demonstrated his willingness to kill for much smaller provocations. He found, across this entire range of external circumstances, something consistent that the range could not disrupt. The quality of his own mind meeting the circumstances. And he concluded from this finding what his philosophy had been pointing toward all along, that the quality of life was not located in the external circumstances but in the interior relationship with them. That a person of genuinely cultivated mind could find genuine equanimity in conditions that would break the person whose peace depended on the external being favorable. Epictetus built perhaps the most direct and the most practically applicable expression of this understanding. From inside slavery, from inside the most complete removal of external freedom available in the ancient world, he observed and then taught that the only thing that genuinely matters in the structure of human experience is what is genuinely yours. And what is genuinely yours is exclusively the interior. The judgment, the intention, the response, the meaning you generate from what arrives. Everything else, every external circumstance, every other person's behavior, every outcome of every effort, every event delivered by a world that operates according to its own principles regardless of individual preference, all of this is not yours. Not in the sense of being within your genuine control. And the attempt to control it, the resistance to what is, the insistence that things should be different from how they are, the suffering generated by the gap between what is and what the mind insists should be, this attempt and this suffering are the primary sources of the unnecessary pain that the untrained mind adds to the genuine pain of living. Everything starts in the mind. And the mind that has been genuinely trained, through the specific, daily, philosophically grounded practices that the Stoics identified and developed and tested across centuries of real lives in real conditions, this mind produces a genuinely different experience of everything the world delivers. Not a better world. A better relationship with the world as it actually is. And the relationship is the experience. The untrained mind, what it does to your experience of everything. Before we can understand what the trained mind produces, we have to be completely honest about what the untrained mind produces. Because the untrained mind's characteristic outputs are so familiar, so completely normalized by the fact that most people around us are also experiencing them, that we have stopped recognizing them as the specific products of an untrained mind rather than the inevitable features of human experience. The untrained mind catastrophizes. It takes the genuinely difficult event and projects it into the largest possible consequence. The medical diagnosis becomes the prediction of the worst possible outcome. The professional setback becomes the evidence that the entire professional direction is failing. The difficult conversation becomes the signal that the relationship is irreparable. The setback becomes the sign that the effort was always going to be futile. The catastrophizing is not based on evidence. It is the automatic output of a mind that has been trained, through years of undirected operation, to default to worst-case interpretation of ambiguous circumstances. And the experience of the catastrophized interpretation, the suffering it produces, the anxiety it generates, the specific quality of living inside a mind that is perpetually projecting worst cases, is not the experience of the actual circumstances. It is the experience of what the mind has made the circumstances into. The untrained mind personalizes. It takes events that have no personal meaning and generates personal meaning from them. The colleague who is distracted becomes someone who is deliberately dismissing you. The friend who cancels becomes someone who is reducing their investment in the relationship. The recognition that goes to someone else becomes evidence that you are not valued. The world's ordinary operation, with its genuine indifference to individual significance, becomes a continuous personal message about your specific worth. And the experience of the personalized world, the world that is constantly commenting on your adequacy, constantly signaling approval or disapproval, constantly reflecting your worth back at you in the specific texture of how things go, is not the experience of the world as it actually is. It is the experience of what the personalizing mind has converted the world into. The untrained mind ruminates. It takes the difficult event, genuinely difficult, genuinely painful, and instead of processing it and releasing it, holds it. Returns to it. Replays it. Reruns the painful moment, the critical comment, the moment of failure or rejection, continuously, as if repeated exposure to the memory will produce the resolution that the exposure consistently fails to produce. The rumination extends the duration of painful experience far beyond the duration of the painful event. The event may have lasted minutes. The rumination lasts hours, days, sometimes weeks. And the experience of those hours and days and weeks is the experience of someone who is not living in the present. Who is living in the endlessly replayed past that the ruminating mind has made its primary residence. The untrained mind anticipates. It takes the genuinely uncertain future and fills it with content. Specifically, with the worst available content. The specific anxiety of something that has not happened and may not happen but is being experienced with the full physiological reality of something that is happening now. Because the body cannot distinguish between the vividly imagined threat and the actual one. And the anticipating mind provides the body with the vividly imagined threat in continuous supply. All of these outputs, the catastrophizing, the personalizing, the ruminating, the anticipating, produce suffering. Not the genuine suffering of genuinely difficult events. The additional, self-generated, mind-produced suffering that the untrained mind adds to every difficult event and to many events that are not genuinely difficult at all. This is what Epictetus was pointing at. This is the specific mechanism of the unnecessary suffering that genuine philosophical practice is designed to address. Not the difficult events. The mind's automatic conversion of every event into the maximally painful version of itself. And the trained mind does not do this. Not because it is invulnerable to difficulty, but because the training has produced a different relationship between the event and the interpretation. A different automatic output from the process of meeting what arrives. What relaxing your mind actually means, and how the Stoics did it. When we say relax your mind in the Stoic sense, we are not talking about the popular understanding of relaxation. Not the temporary relief of distraction. Not the numbing of entertainment. Not the managed escape from difficult internal experience into temporarily more pleasant external stimulation. The Stoic understanding of mental relaxation is something considerably more demanding and considerably more genuinely transformative. It is the specific interior condition of a mind that has been freed from the unnecessary tension of resistance. Of insisting that things be different from what they are. Of generating suffering from the gap between what is and what the mind demands should be. This condition, what the Stoics called equanimity, is not the absence of engagement. It is the fullest possible engagement with what is actually real, without the distorting overlay of what the mind insists should be real instead. The relaxed mind in the Stoic sense is not the passive mind. Not the mind that has disengaged from the world and retreated into comfortable detachment. The mind that is fully engaged with what is genuinely present, that sees it clearly, feels what is genuinely there to be felt, responds with genuine consideration, without the additional layers of catastrophizing and personalizing and ruminating and anticipating that the untrained mind generates on top of the genuine experience. Marcus Aurelius achieved this, imperfectly, with ongoing practice, not as a permanent state but as a practice direction, through several specific disciplines that he returned to consistently throughout his life. The first was the practice of seeing things as they actually are rather than as the mind's interpretive apparatus makes them. He wrote about the practice of stripping the presentation from things, removing the elaboration, the emotional charge, the layered significance that the mind automatically assigns, to see the bare event beneath. The criticism is words that were spoken. Not a verdict on your worth. Not a threat to your standing. Words that were spoken by a person who has their own interior and their own perspective and their own limits and their own. The specific practices that train the mind toward genuine relaxation. Every understanding we have covered becomes real only through practice. And the practice of training the mind toward genuine relaxation is specific, daily, and available beginning now. The practice of morning orientation is the foundation. Before the day begins delivering the content that the untrained mind will automatically begin elaborating into distress, before the news, the notifications, the social inputs, the professional demands, there is a window. The specific, brief, genuinely available window of the early morning that belongs entirely to the deliberate direction of the mind before the world begins trying to direct it. Use this window for the specific practice of conscious orientation. Not positive thinking. Not the performance of gratitude that denies what is genuinely difficult. The honest, clear, philosophically grounded orientation of the mind toward what the day will actually require and what the genuine relationship with those requirements will look like from inside a trained rather than untrained mind. The specific question is not, how do I want to feel today? Feelings are not directly willed. The specific questions are, what is genuinely within my control today, and what is not? Where is my energy most genuinely useful, and where would directing it be a waste of what cannot be recovered? What is the genuine difficulty the day is likely to contain, and what is the trained mind's relationship with that difficulty? These questions, engaged with honestly for a few minutes before the day begins, establish the interior orientation from which everything else is met. Not as a guarantee of equanimity, as the specific preparation that makes equanimity more accessible throughout the day than it would be without the preparation. The practice of the interpretive pause is the day's discipline. In every moment where the automatic mind begins its elaboration, where the event begins to become, in the mind's processing, the catastrophized or personalized or ruminated version of itself, the brief, deliberate pause. The specific interruption between the event and the interpretation that creates the space in which the question can be asked. What is actually here? Not what has the mind made this into. What is actually, genuinely, stripped of elaboration, present in this moment? This question, asked with genuine honesty rather than rhetorical defensiveness, consistently reveals the gap between the event and the experience the untrained mind generates from it. And the revelation of that gap is the beginning of the trained mind's alternative, the interpretation that is accurate rather than catastrophized, proportionate rather than magnified, present rather than ruminated or anticipated. The practice of physical relaxation as mind training. The relationship between body and mind is not one-directional. The mind's tension produces body tension. And the body's tension maintains the mind's. They are in continuous mutual influence. And the specific practice of deliberately relaxing the body, the systematic, practiced release of the physical tension that the chronically stressed mind produces, is one of the most direct available approaches to the relaxation of the mind itself. This is not stretching. It is the specific, conscious, breath-grounded practice of releasing the physical manifestation of mental tension. The jaw that is held tight. The shoulders that have risen toward the ears. The chest that is collapsed. The breath that is shallow and rapid rather than slow and deep. Each of these physical expressions of mental tension, consciously identified and consciously released, produces a direct and immediate effect on the quality of the interior experience. Not because the physical release resolves the mental content that produced the tension, but because the specific physiological state of physical relaxation is less compatible with the catastrophizing, ruminating, anticipating mind than the tensed physiological state that the untrained mind produces and maintains. Practice this throughout the day. Not in formal dedicated sessions only. In the actual moments when the physical tension of mental stress is present. The meeting that is generating tension. The conversation that has produced the jaw clenching. The uncertainty that has raised the shoulders. In that moment, the conscious breath. The deliberate physical release. The specific return of the body to a state more compatible with the trained mind's operation. The practice of deliberate gratitude, not the performance but the genuine thing. The Stoics practiced what they called negative visualization, the deliberate, regular contemplation of the absence of what they currently had, not to produce anxiety about loss but to produce the genuine, deeply felt appreciation of what is actually present. The specific reversal of the untrained mind's tendency to catalog what is absent and take for granted what is here. When the mind is oriented toward what is missing, what is wrong, what is not yet achieved, what was promised and not delivered, it produces the specific interior experience of someone who is perpetually deprived. For whom life is primarily a series of absences and disappointments and gaps between expectation and reality. The practice of genuine gratitude, not the listed gratitude of someone following a protocol, but the genuinely felt, embodied recognition of what is actually present, reverses this orientation. It does not deny what is genuinely absent or genuinely difficult. But it insists on the honest accounting that also includes what is genuinely here. The specific people and conditions and capacities and experiences that the cataloging of absence was preventing from being seen. And when the honest accounting is done with genuine completeness, when the actually present receives the same quality of attention as the actually absent, the interior experience of the same life changes. Not because the life changed. Because the mind's relationship with it changed. And the relationship, as everything we have covered confirms, is the experience. The practice of the evening return. At the end of each day, the specific, patient practice of returning the mind to genuine rest. Not by managing or suppressing the content that the day produced but by honestly processing it and then deliberately releasing it. The honest processing, what happened today that genuinely needs to be acknowledged? The difficulty that was real and deserves honest recognition. The feeling that arose and deserves genuine acknowledgement. The situation that was handled imperfectly and deserves honest examination of what the imperfection reveals about where the practice needs to go deeper. Then the deliberate release, into the past where it belongs. As material that has been honestly processed. As a day that has given everything it has to give. Not into forgetting. Into the specific completion of past experience that allows the present, including the present of sleep, of genuine rest, of the specific physiological restoration that genuine mental relaxation makes possible, to be genuinely inhabited. The mind that goes to sleep still carrying the unprocessed content of the day does not genuinely rest. It continues processing in the specific anxiety-generating, sleep-disrupting way that the unprocessed content requires. The mind that has genuinely processed and genuinely released the day's content can rest in the specific deep way that genuine processing and release make possible. This is the evening practice. Not elaborate. Honest. Complete. Releasing. The relationship between the relaxed mind and the quality of every dimension of life. The transformation that genuine mental relaxation produces is not limited to the interior experience. It spreads, through specific mechanisms, into every dimension of the life that the trained mind inhabits. Relationships improve. The person whose mind is chronically tense, whose automatic interpretations convert neutral events into personal attacks, whose catastrophizing makes ordinary relational difficulty into existential threat, this person brings their tension into every relationship. Responds from the tense mind's characteristic outputs rather than from the actual content of the relational moment. Creates, through the mind's chronic misinterpretation, the specific relational difficulties that the chronic tension was already anticipating. The person with a trained, relaxed mind brings a different quality to every relationship they inhabit. The specific capacity to hear what is actually being communicated rather than what the anxious mind would convert it into. To respond to what is actually present rather than to the catastrophized version of it. To be genuinely here with the person in front of them rather than managing the relational anxiety that the untrained mind perpetually generates. Work improves. The mind in chronic tension is not operating at full cognitive capacity. The specific resources that clear thinking, creative engagement, and genuine problem-solving require are partially consumed by the management of the tension itself. The mind that is simultaneously trying to think clearly and managing the chronic anxiety of the untrained mind has less available for the thinking than the mind that is not managing the anxiety. The relaxed mind is not the lazy mind. It is the fully available mind. The mind whose cognitive resources are not partially committed to the chronic anxiety management that the tension requires. And full cognitive availability, applied to work that is genuinely engaging, produces a quality of output that the chronically tense mind cannot match regardless of the intelligence it is working with. Health responds. The research on the relationship between chronic mental stress and physical health is extensive, consistent, and practically important. Chronic tension, the physiological state produced by the chronically anxious, catastrophizing, ruminating mind, produces measurable effects on immune function, cardiovascular health, inflammatory response, sleep quality, and the cellular aging processes that determine how the body moves through time. The relaxed mind, genuinely relaxed in the Stoic sense, not sedated but genuinely freed from the chronic tension of unnecessary internal resistance, produces the physiological conditions that are more compatible with genuine physical health. Not as a cure for physical illness. As the reduction of the specific physiological burden that the chronically tense mind imposes on the body housing it. Elena understood this. Her preparation for the surgery was not primarily about improving the surgical outcome. It was about the quality of the 3 months she had before the surgery. About the specific physiological conditions in which her body would enter the operating room. About the genuine peace, not performed, not forced, but practiced, with which she could inhabit the uncertainty that the surgical outcome represented. She relaxed the things she could not control. And in that relaxation, genuine, philosophically grounded, daily practiced, she freed everything available to her for the actual living of the actual life she had in front of her. The surgery was successful. But the 3 months before it were also successful. In the specific, irreplaceable, completely human sense of having been genuinely lived by a person who was genuinely present to them. That is the gift of the trained mind. Not the better outcomes. The better living. The genuine presence to the actual life. The specific quality of a person who is not constantly somewhere else in their own head, catastrophizing about the future, ruminating about the past, generating from the neutral events of the present the maximally painful versions of themselves, but genuinely here. In this moment. With this person. Engaged with this life as it actually is. What begins when the mind genuinely relaxes? When the mind genuinely relaxes, not temporarily, not through distraction, but through the genuine, practiced, philosophically grounded release of the chronic tension of internal resistance, something becomes available that the tense mind cannot access. The full experience of the actual life. Not the life as the catastrophizing mind makes it. Not the life as the personalizing mind converts it. Not the life as the ruminating mind replays it or the anticipating mind projects it. The actual life. As it is. With its specific texture and specific people and specific difficulties and specific genuine gifts that the tense mind's constant elaboration was preventing from being genuinely received. This life, the actual one, seen clearly by the genuinely relaxed mind, is not what the anxious mind suggested it was. It is not primarily threat and disappointment and the continuous gap between expectation and reality. It is more complex and more textured and more genuinely interesting and more genuinely beautiful in specific ways than the tense mind's chronic production of worst-case interpretations had been making visible. Not because the actual life contains no genuine difficulty. It does. The genuine difficulties are real and the relaxed mind does not deny them or perform acceptance of them, it does not genuinely feel. But the actual life, seen clearly, contains the genuine difficulties and also considerably more than just the genuine difficulties. And the tense mind, consumed by the generation of additional suffering from every event, was missing the considerably more. Marcus Aurelius relaxed his mind, imperfectly, daily, as an ongoing practice rather than a permanent achievement, and found in the extraordinary circumstances of his extraordinary life the specific quality of genuine presence to what was actually real. The plague was real. The war was real. The political betrayal was real. The grief of personal loss was real. And the morning light was also real. The quality of a conversation that was genuinely honest was also real. The specific satisfaction of a day spent in genuine service of the values he had committed his life to was also real. The relaxed mind receives all of it. The tense mind receives primarily the first category and misses most of the rest. Everything starts in the mind. And the mind, genuinely relaxed through genuine practice, starts everything differently. It starts with what is actually here. It starts with genuine presence. It starts with the specific quality of a person who has decided, through the daily practice of meeting what arrives with trained rather than untrained interior, that their experience of their life will be determined by the quality of their own mind rather than by the cooperation of their circumstances. This decision, made genuinely and practiced daily, is the beginning of everything. Subscribe to Stoic Ascension right now. Turn on your notifications. Every single video on this channel is built for exactly this depth of philosophical understanding and genuine practical application. The philosophy, the practice, and the complete transformation of the relationship between your mind and your experience of absolutely everything that happens to you. What comes after this builds directly on everything you just heard. Every video goes deeper. Every video takes the practice further into the specific work of a life genuinely and deliberately inhabited. Elena relaxed into what she could not control. And the 3 months she could not guarantee became 3 months she genuinely lived. That is available to you. In every circumstance. In every difficulty. In every moment where the untrained mind would begin its elaboration into the maximally painful version of what is happening. The pause. The question. The honest return to what is actually here. The relaxed mind meeting the actual life. Everything starts there. Begin the practice. Now. Be the person they can't replace. The company had 347 employees the day they let him go. He had been there for 11 years. He knew the building's layout better than most of the people who designed it. He knew which clients preferred to be called and which preferred email and which preferred to hear nothing until the work was done and presented. He knew the history of every major project, every significant failure, every lesson that the organization had paid for in time and money and reputation, and that was stored nowhere in any documentation system but existed only in the memory of the people who had been there when it happened. He thought this made him irreplaceable. He was wrong. Not because the organization did not notice his departure. They noticed. There was a period of genuine disruption. Projects that had benefited from his specific knowledge encountered friction without it. Clients who had relied on his particular style of engagement required recultivation. The institutional memory he carried had to be partially rebuilt from scratch, at real cost and real time. But it was rebuilt. Within 18 months, the organization had adapted. New people had developed new knowledge. New systems had captured what the systems had failed to capture before. The specific value that 11 years had accumulated in one person had been distributed, at some cost, across processes and documentation and the gradual development of new expertise. He was replaced. His name was Jonathan. And the 18 months after his departure, the months during which he watched, from the outside, the organization's gradual recovery from his absence, were among the most clarifying of his life. Because they forced him to confront, with an honesty that comfortable employment had never required, a question that most people never genuinely ask until they are required to. What about me is actually irreplaceable? Not my knowledge of this particular organization. That was clearly replaceable. Not my institutional history with this particular set of clients. That had been demonstrably rebuilt. Not the specific technical skills that my years in this particular industry had accumulated. Those could be learned by someone with sufficient time and sufficient motivation. What about me, as a person, as a human being, as the specific individual I have been spending my life becoming, is genuinely, fundamentally, not replaceable by the presence of someone else? He sat with this question for a long time. Longer than was comfortable. Because the honest engagement with it produced answers that were considerably more demanding than the question initially suggested. The answer was not his knowledge. Not his skills. Not his experience. Not his professional network or his industry reputation or any of the external accumulations that his career had produced. The answer was his character. The specific quality of who he was in the unglamorous moments that no job description captured and no performance review adequately assessed. The specific honesty with which he engaged with difficult truths. The specific courage with which he advocated for what he genuinely believed was right even when the room wanted something more comfortable. The specific depth of genuine care he brought to the relationships in his life, not the professional relationships managed for strategic purpose but the genuine ones, the ones built on honest mutual recognition of two people trying to navigate the same fundamental human challenges. These things, these interior qualities, practiced and developed through years of deliberate attention to who he was becoming rather than to what he was accumulating, these were not replaceable. Not because they were rare in some abstract sense. But because they were specifically and completely his. Built from his specific history, his specific values, his specific daily practice of choosing who he was going to be in the circumstances the day provided. He could not be replaced because the person who had become him was irreplaceable. Not the employee. The human being. He spent the next 2 years rebuilding his professional life around this understanding. Not around the accumulation of skills and knowledge and institutional position that had been so decisively demonstrated to be replaceable. Around the deliberate, daily, philosophically grounded development of the interior qualities that no organization could duplicate because they were not located in any organization's assets. And the professional life that emerged from this rebuilding was not the same as the one that had been disrupted. It was better. Specifically because it was built from the inside out rather than the outside in. This is what we are exploring today. Completely. Without the comfortable abstractions that motivational content substitutes for the genuine philosophical work that genuine irreplaceability actually requires. This is Stoic Ascension. Subscribe to this channel right now and turn on your notifications because every single video here is built for exactly this depth of genuine philosophical engagement. The kind that changes not what you know but who you are and what you are actually becoming through your actual daily choices. What comes after this builds directly on everything you are about to hear. Do not miss what is coming. What irreplaceability actually means, and where it actually lives. The popular understanding of irreplaceability is almost entirely located in the wrong place. And the mislocation is consequential because it produces the specific kind of irreplaceability that can be replaced, the accumulation of specialized knowledge, rare skills, institutional position, professional network, while neglecting the specific kind that genuinely cannot. In the popular understanding, you become irreplaceable by knowing things others do not know. By having skills others have not developed. By occupying a position in a network or an organization that would be difficult to fill without the specific history you bring to it. This understanding is not entirely wrong. These things have genuine value. The rare skill, the specialized knowledge, the hard-won institutional position, these are real contributions and their absence is genuinely felt when they are removed. But they are replaceable. Demonstrably, consistently, across the full range of human organizational experience, replaceable. Given sufficient time, sufficient motivation, and sufficient resources, almost any combination of knowledge and skill and institutional position can be rebuilt by someone else or distributed across multiple someone else's. Jonathan's 11 years was rebuilt in 18 months. The genuine irreplaceability that the Stoics identified and built their philosophy around is not located in what you know or what you can do. It is located in who you are. In the specific quality of your character. In the particular way you are in the world, the specific honesty you bring, the specific courage you express, the specific depth of genuine care you offer, the specific integrity with which your choices honor your values. These things cannot be replaced. Not because they are rare in some competitive sense. But because they are specifically yours. Built from your specific interior, through your specific practice, expressing your specific genuine values in the specific circumstances of your specific actual life. No one else can be you. Not because your knowledge is irreplaceable. Because you are irreplaceable. The specific human being you are in the process of becoming, through the daily, deliberate, philosophically grounded practice of choosing who you are in every available moment, this person is not a commodity to be sourced from elsewhere. Is not a set of capabilities to be downloaded into a different container. Is the specific, unrepeatable, genuinely irreplaceable result of a life being genuinely lived by the specific person living it. This is where genuine irreplaceability lives. Not in the accumulation of external assets. In the development of internal character. And the Stoics built the most precise and the most practically applicable philosophy available for how this development actually happens. Why the Stoics understood irreplaceability better than anyone. The Stoic philosophers operated in a specific historical context that made the question of genuine irreplaceability not a comfortable philosophical abstraction but an urgent practical necessity. They lived in environments where external position, status, wealth, and influence were radically unstable. Where political favor could disappear overnight. Where physical freedom could be removed by a single decision from the wrong person in the wrong mood. Where everything that the external world provided could be taken, and frequently was taken, without warning and without appeal. In this environment, the question of what was genuinely irreplaceable about a person was not philosophical luxury. It was survival. Because the person whose sense of self, whose genuine value, whose irreplaceable contribution to the world was located in external things that could be removed, this person was genuinely vulnerable in a way that no amount of careful management of the external could ultimately protect against. And the person whose genuine irreplaceability was located in their character, in the interior qualities that no external force could remove without the person's own complicity, this person was genuinely secure. Not comfortable necessarily. Not free from difficulty or loss or the full weight of what the external world's instability could deliver. but secure. With the specific security of someone whose most fundamental value was located precisely where the world's instability could not reach it. Epictetus understood this from the most direct possible experience. As a slave, he had lost everything the external world provides. He had no property, no freedom of movement, no legal personhood, no professional status, no institutional position. Every external marker of value had been removed by the specific legal and social structures of the world he had been born into. And from inside this complete external deprivation, he produced one of the most consequential philosophical contributions in human history. Not because he had developed rare skills or accumulated specialized knowledge or built a professional network. Because he had developed, through the specific daily practice of philosophical engagement with the most demanding possible circumstances, a quality of character that was genuinely irreplaceable in the most fundamental sense available. He was Epictetus. Specifically, completely, irreducibly. And no one else could be that. Marcus Aurelius built his understanding of genuine irreplaceability from the opposite direction. He had everything the external world provides: wealth, power, status, institutional position at the absolute summit of the Roman Empire. And he understood, with characteristic honesty, that none of it was what made him genuinely valuable to the people and the purposes he cared most about. What made him genuinely valuable was his character. The specific way he exercised the enormous power he had been given. The specific honesty with which he engaged with genuinely difficult decisions. The specific justice with which he treated the people subject to his authority. The specific humility with which he continued to examine and revise his own understanding in the face of new evidence and new experience. These qualities, not the throne, not the armies, not the wealth, were what the people who genuinely knew him valued and what the people who came after him have studied as genuinely worth understanding. The power could be inherited. The character could not. The position could be occupied by someone else. The specific person Marcus was could not. This is the Stoic understanding of genuine irreplaceability. It is entirely interior. Entirely built. Entirely the product of deliberate, daily, philosophically grounded development of the specific qualities that constitute genuine character. And it is available to anyone. In any circumstances. Regardless of external position or accumulated assets or institutional recognition. Because it lives precisely where none of those things live, inside the person. In the place that is genuinely, permanently, completely yours. The specific qualities that constitute genuine irreplaceability, and how each is built. Genuine irreplaceability is not a single quality. It is a structure, built from several distinct but deeply interconnected interior qualities, each one adding a specific dimension to the genuine uniqueness of the person who has developed them all. Understanding each of them clearly is the beginning of building them deliberately. And building them deliberately, through the daily practice we will come to, is the only way the structure is genuinely constructed. Radical honesty, not just with others but with yourself. The most immediately recognizable quality of a genuinely irreplaceable person is the specific kind of honesty they bring to every situation they inhabit. Not the honesty of someone who says whatever they think regardless of consequence. That is not honesty, that is thoughtlessness wearing honesty's clothing. The specific honesty of a person who will say the true thing when the true thing is genuinely needed, even when saying it is genuinely costly, even when the room wants something more comfortable, even when the personal consequences of saying it are real and known and not small. This kind of honesty is genuinely rare. Because the pressures against it are continuous and powerful. The social pressure toward agreement. The professional pressure toward telling the person with authority what they want to hear. The relational pressure toward the comfortable statement that preserves the peace at the cost of the genuine truth. Most people capitulate to these pressures most of the time. And the capitulation is understandable. The costs of genuine honesty in specific moments can be real and significant. The social exclusion, the professional consequence, the relational friction, these are not imaginary. They are the actual price that genuine honesty sometimes asks. But the person who consistently pays this price, who can be relied upon, across the full range of circumstances and social pressures, to say what is actually true rather than what is most comfortable, becomes something that the organization or the relationship or the community around them desperately needs and rarely finds. They become the person whose assessment can be trusted, whose enthusiasm means something because their criticism means something, whose agreement is genuine because their disagreement is genuine, whose presence in any important conversation changes the quality of what the conversation produces because the room knows that what this person says reflects what they actually believe rather than what the room wanted to hear. This is irreplaceable. Not because no one else is honest, but because this specific person's specific honesty, grounded in their specific values, expressed in their specific voice, built through their specific daily practice of choosing the true thing over the comfortable thing, cannot be replicated by a different person's honesty. It is theirs. And when they are gone, it is gone with them. The building of this quality begins with the most demanding form of honesty available, the honesty with yourself. The willingness to see your own patterns as they actually are rather than as you would prefer them to be. To acknowledge your own limitations as genuinely as you acknowledge your strengths. To recognize where your choices have not honored your values as clearly as you recognize where they have. This internal honesty is the foundation of external honesty. Because the person who cannot be honest with themselves will not be genuinely honest with others. They will be honest about the things that are comfortable to be honest about and will find, in the moments where genuine honesty would be genuinely costly, a way to believe that what is comfortable to say is actually what is true. The genuine honesty that constitutes one dimension of irreplaceability begins inside. In the daily, patient, sometimes uncomfortable practice of seeing yourself and your actual choices as they actually are. The courage to act from values when acting from them is genuinely expensive. Every person has values they can articulate. The values claimed in conversations where claiming them costs nothing, the commitment to fairness, to honesty, to genuine care for others, to the quality of the work, to treating people with dignity, these are universally available. They are the standard vocabulary of the person who wants to be seen as someone with values. The specific quality that constitutes genuine irreplaceability is not the values claimed. It is the values expressed in behavior when the expression is genuinely expensive. When the fair thing costs you something real. When the honest thing risks a relationship you value. When standing for the quality of the work means conflict with someone who has authority over your professional fate. This is where most people discover the gap between the values they claim and the values they actually hold. Because the values they actually hold are not the ones they articulate in comfortable conversations. They are the ones they honor in the specific moments when honoring them costs something. And in those moments, most people discover that what they actually value, when the choice is real and the cost is real, is somewhat different from what they have been claiming to value. The person who closes this gap, who, through the specific daily practice of choosing the values-aligned action even when the cost is real, gradually becomes someone whose behavior and stated values are the same thing, becomes genuinely irreplaceable in any environment they inhabit. Because this person is reliable in the specific way that matters most. Not reliable in the sense of showing up on time and completing assigned tasks, those forms of reliability are genuinely replaceable. Reliable in the sense of being the same person in the difficult moment that they are in the comfortable one. Of not collapsing into whatever is most politically expedient when the genuine cost of their values becomes apparent. This reliability, the specific, tested, demonstrated reliability of a person who honors their values past the point where most people stop honoring theirs, produces a quality of trust in the people who know them that no amount of impressive skill or specialized knowledge can replicate. Because trust of this kind is not based on what someone knows or can do. It is based on who they are. And who they are is not a commodity. The building of this quality requires the specific, ongoing practice of making the values-aligned choice when the cost is real. Not in the grand dramatic moments that make good stories. In the small, daily, mostly private moments that make actual character. The conversation you have honestly rather than comfortably. The position you maintain in the room where the room wants you to release it. The quality you insist on in the work when expedience would have accepted less. The truth you tell when the comfortable alternative was available and would not have been noticed. Each of these small, specific, mostly private choices adds one more sentence to the story that your character is built from. And the accumulation of those sentences, over months and years of genuine practice, produces the person who is reliably themselves in the moments that matter. The person who cannot be replaced because what they are cannot be found somewhere else. The capacity for genuine depth in relationship. There is a specific quality of human connection that is among the rarest and most genuinely irreplaceable things available in any relationship or any community. The quality of being genuinely known. Of being with a person who is actually present, actually here, actually receiving what you are actually communicating, actually engaged with who you actually are rather than with the presentation you make for general audiences. This quality, genuine depth in relationship, the specific capacity for real connection rather than managed interaction, is not produced by social skill. The socially skilled person can produce the appearance of genuine connection with extraordinary consistency and zero actual depth. They know the words and the timing and the facial expressions and the responses that make the other person feel seen without actually being seen. Genuine depth requires something that social skill does not provide. It requires the genuine interior presence of a person who is actually here. Who is not managing the impression they are making while appearing to listen. Who is not preparing their response while appearing to receive. Who is not calculating the relational benefit of apparent connection while appearing to be genuinely connected. This presence is built through the specific practice of genuine attention. The daily, ongoing, deliberately maintained practice of actually being here with the person in front of you. Of giving them the specific quality of attention that is genuinely receiving rather than strategically responding. Of being moved by what is genuinely moving in what they share rather than performing the appropriate response to what you anticipated before they finished sharing it. The person who has built this capacity, who can be genuinely present to another human being with the specific completeness that genuine presence requires, becomes something that the people around them cannot find easily elsewhere. Because genuine presence is rare. Because the experience of being genuinely known, of having your full actual experience received and acknowledged by another person who is fully actually here, is one of the most powerfully human experiences available and one of the most consistently absent from most people's daily lives. When you are the person who provides this experience consistently, in the relationships you invest in the conversations you inhabit, you become irreplaceable to the people who have experienced being genuinely known by you. Because the experience of being genuinely known cannot be replicated by someone else's presence. It is the product of your specific attention and your specific genuine care and your specific practice of actually being here. And it is among the most durable and most impactful contributions one human being can make to another. The discipline to develop genuine mastery over time. Mastery is different from competence. And the difference is one of the most important distinctions in the entire question of genuine irreplaceability. Competence is achievable through sufficient practice and sufficient time by virtually anyone with sufficient motivation. The specific professional knowledge, the technical skills, the domain expertise, these are real and they have real value and they are acquirable by most people who are willing to put in the requisite effort and time. Mastery is something different. Not more of the same competence. A qualitative change in the relationship between the practitioner and the practice. The specific quality of someone who has engaged with something so deeply, over such sustained time, with such genuine commitment to understanding not just how to do it but why it works and where its limits are and how it connects to everything else, that their engagement with it produces something that the competent person cannot produce. The Stoics understood mastery as a dimension of genuine character rather than as a professional achievement. They described it in terms of the quality of attention brought to the work rather than in terms of the accumulated knowledge the work produced. The person of genuine mastery is not primarily the person who knows the most. They are the person who cares the most. Who is most genuinely engaged. Who brings to the practice the full weight of genuine attention and genuine commitment and genuine curiosity, not strategic curiosity designed to produce impressive-sounding questions, but the real kind, the kind that cannot rest until it genuinely understands. The building of genuine mastery requires something that most people are not willing to give because the giving requires the specific patience that our current cultural environment is specifically designed to undermine. Time. Real time. The years of sustained, consistent, deeply engaged practice that genuine mastery requires. Not the 10,000 hours of the popular formulation, though the formulation points at something real. The specific quality of time, deeply engaged, genuinely curious, honestly examined for the gaps between current capacity and the mastery being worked toward, that the accumulation of mere competence does not require. Jonathan discovered this during the 2 years of rebuilding after his departure. He had been competent for 11 years. He had not been genuinely masterful at anything in particular. He had been adequate across a broad range of professional requirements. And adequate, it turned out, was replaceable. He spent the 2 years developing genuine mastery in a single domain. Not the broadest domain or the most immediately impressive one. The specific domain where his genuine curiosity and his specific history and his particular perspective converged into something that was genuinely his. And the mastery he built in that domain, through the years of sustained, deeply engaged, genuinely curious practice, produced something that his 11 years of broad competence had never produced. Something that the people who encountered it could not find the same way anywhere else. Not because no one else knew the domain, but because no one else knew it the way Jonathan knew it, through Jonathan's specific history and Jonathan's specific perspective and Jonathan's specific genuine engagement with the particular questions that the domain raised for him specifically. The mastery was irreplaceable because it was specifically his. Not a generic body of knowledge that could be found elsewhere. His specific relationship with the knowledge. Built from the inside out. The practice of continuous self-examination and genuine growth. The Stoics identified something about the genuinely irreplaceable person that is easy to overlook when focusing on the qualities already described. Something that is not a quality in the same sense as honesty or courage or relational depth or mastery. Something more fundamental than any of those. The quality that produces and maintains all the others. The commitment to genuine ongoing self-examination. The daily, patient, honest practice of looking at yourself and your choices and your patterns with the specific quality of attention that produces genuine learning rather than comfortable self-confirmation. Most people stop genuinely examining themselves. Not consciously. They develop a picture of who they are and what they are capable of and where their genuine strengths and limitations are. And then they stop updating the picture with genuine frequency or genuine honesty. They manage the picture rather than examining it. They interpret new experience through the existing picture rather than allowing new experience to genuinely revise it. The person who maintains genuine self-examination, who continues to look, with real honesty, at who they actually are in the moments that reveal it, and who continues to be genuinely willing to be surprised by what the looking finds, this person continues to grow in the specific way that genuine growth requires. They are not the same person at 50 that they were at 30. Not because the years passed but because the years were inhabited by someone who was genuinely paying attention to what the years were teaching. And the person who continues to genuinely grow, who is a meaningfully different and more developed person each year than they were the year before, is irreplaceable in the specific sense that the version of them at any given point could not have been predicted from the version that preceded it and cannot be replicated by anyone who has not done the same internal work. They are always becoming. Always genuinely in the process of being built. And the person always genuinely in the process of being built cannot be replaced because the being built is the thing. The environments that most need the irreplaceable person, and what it means to inhabit them genuinely. Every environment, every organization, every family, every community, every relationship, has a specific need for the qualities that constitute genuine irreplaceability. And understanding where this need is most acute and what inhabiting these environments genuinely requires is part of what makes the development of these qualities practically meaningful rather than abstractly philosophical. Organizations need people who will tell them what is actually true rather than what they want to hear. The organizational tendency toward comfortable internal narrative, toward the interpretation of events that flatters the existing leadership and the existing strategy rather than the interpretation that might require difficult revisions, is among the most consistent and most costly patterns in organizational life. The person who has developed genuine honesty as a practiced interior quality, not the honesty of someone who will say anything regardless of consequence, but the honesty of someone who will say the necessary true thing when the necessary true thing is genuinely needed, becomes genuinely invaluable in this context. Not because they are the most technically skilled. Because they perform a function that the technically skilled person who lacks this honesty cannot perform. They provide the organization with the genuine reality testing that comfortable internal narrative consistently prevents. Families need people who can be genuinely present. The specific, demanding, continuously practiced quality of genuine presence, of actually being here with the people in the relationship rather than managing the impression of presence while actually inhabiting the distracted interior of a person who is somewhere else, is among the most consistently absent qualities in modern family life. The person who has developed genuine presence, who can be actually here with the specific person in front of them, receiving what is actually being communicated rather than responding to what was anticipated before the communication was complete, becomes the specific person in the family to whom people bring what is genuinely difficult. Because they know that this person will actually receive it. Will actually be here with it. Will not manage the conversation toward the comfortable resolution that the other person's discomfort requires. Will stay, with genuine attention and genuine care, in the actual difficulty of the actual thing being shared. This person cannot be replaced in the family. Not because no one else loves the family. But because genuine presence is rare enough that its absence, when this person is gone, is felt in a specific way that cannot be compensated for by the genuine but differently expressed love of the other people who remain. Communities need people of genuine courage. The specific courage of someone who will say the necessary thing in the community conversation when the room does not want to hear the necessary thing. Who will advocate for what is genuinely right when the powerful prefer something more convenient. Who will stand, sometimes alone, for the position that genuine values require when standing for it is professionally or socially costly. This person, the person of genuine courage, who can be relied upon to express what they genuinely believe even when the expression is genuinely expensive, becomes the specific person the community turns to in the moments of genuine difficulty. Because in those moments, the community needs someone who is not calculating their position before they speak. Who is not managing their alignment with the powerful before they take a stand. Who is just telling the truth. From the genuinely held values. Regardless of who is in the room or what the cost of telling it might be. This person is irreplaceable. Not because no one else in the community has values. But because this specific person's specific courageous expression of their specific values cannot be replicated by anyone else's different expression of different values. It is theirs. And the community, in the moments where it is most needed, knows whose it is. What prevents most people from becoming genuinely irreplaceable, and how to address each obstacle. Understanding the qualities that constitute genuine irreplaceability and understanding what prevents their development are equally necessary. Because the obstacles are real and the people who encounter them without understanding them as obstacles consistently allow them to remain in place. The first obstacle is the confusion of performance with character. Performance is what you do when you are being observed. Character is what you do when you are not. And most people have developed significantly more skill at performance than at character. They know how to appear honest in professional contexts. How to appear caring in social ones. How to appear courageous when the courage costs nothing. How to present the qualities that the irreplaceable person actually has without developing the actual qualities themselves. The performance is convincing. It produces external recognition that the character-building work does not always produce. And the recognition reinforces the performance, deepening the investment in it as the primary strategy. Until the moment of genuine test. When the performance's absence of interior foundation is revealed by circumstances that performance cannot meet. The address to this obstacle is the specific, daily practice of attending to who you are when no one is watching. The choices made in private that no one will ever assess. The commitments honored in the middle of the night when the only witness is yourself. The quality of engagement brought to the work when the engagement will not be publicly recognized. The honesty extended in the moment when the comfortable alternative was available and would not have been noticed. These private practices are where actual character is built. And actual character, built in private through the accumulation of unremarked private choices, is what the moments of genuine test reveal and what the genuinely irreplaceable person is genuinely made of. The second obstacle is the prioritization of comfort over growth. Growth is the specific process of becoming different from who you currently are. And the process of becoming different is inherently uncomfortable. Not dramatically. Not necessarily in ways that are visible from the outside. But in the specific way that doing something genuinely different from what the established patterns produce is always uncomfortable. Because the established patterns are what comfort is built from. And departing from them is the definition of discomfort. Most people avoid this specific discomfort by choosing the comfortable repetition of established patterns over the uncomfortable engagement with what the growth requires. They continue doing what they have already learned to do, becoming progressively more skilled at what they are already skilled at, and calling the refinement of existing competence growth. It is not growth in the relevant sense. It is the comfortable elaboration of what is already there. And the elaboration of what is already there produces more of what is already there rather than the qualitatively different person that genuine irreplaceability requires. The address to this obstacle is the specific, ongoing practice of deliberate engagement with what is genuinely uncomfortable. The conversation that your current patterns would avoid. The domain of genuine uncertainty that your current expertise does not resolve. The challenge that exceeds what your current capacity can meet without developing new capacity. Not all at once. Not dramatically. With the patient, consistent, genuine commitment to remaining in genuine contact with the edges of your current capacity rather than retreating to the comfort of its well-established center. The third obstacle is the dependence on external validation as the primary measure of development. The genuinely irreplaceable person is built primarily in private. The internal qualities that constitute genuine irreplaceability, the honesty, the courage, the genuine relational depth, the mastery, the ongoing self-examination, these are developed through practices that are not primarily observed or rewarded by external audiences. And the person who has calibrated their development primarily to what receives external validation will not develop these qualities. Because external validation is not primarily sensitive to the interior. It is primarily sensitive to the visible. And the visible dimensions of a person, their skills, their knowledge, their professional output, their social presentation, can be impressive without the interior qualities that constitute genuine irreplaceability. The development of genuine irreplaceability requires the specific discipline of caring more about who you are than about how you appear. Of measuring your development against the honest interior standard of genuine values rather than against the external standard of received recognition. Of being willing to do the interior work without the external reward because the interior work is what actually matters rather than the external recognition that might or might not follow it. The daily practice of becoming genuinely irreplaceable. Everything we have covered exists to support a specific daily practice. Not an elaborate system. Not a comprehensive program. The specific, honest, daily engagement with the question that genuine irreplaceability requires. Each morning, the honest preparation, who am I working to be today? Not globally, the global aspiration is not the practice. Specifically. In the circumstances this day is likely to provide. Where will the opportunity arise to express the honesty that genuine irreplaceability requires? Where will the courage be needed? Where will genuine presence be the most important thing I can offer? Where will the mastery I am building have the opportunity to be genuinely expressed? These questions establish the interior orientation from which the day is met. Not as a guarantee that the day will honor the preparation, but as the specific rehearsal of the genuine person, the irreplaceable one, in the specific circumstances where the expression of that person will be genuinely possible and genuinely needed. Throughout the day, the practice of the honest choice. In every moment where the genuinely irreplaceable response and the comfortable habitual one diverge, and in a day genuinely oriented toward this development, those moments are frequent, the brief deliberate choice. The honest thing or the comfortable thing. The courageous position or the expedient one. The genuine presence or the managed appearance of it. The quality the mastery requires or the adequacy that expediency accepts. the honest self-examination or the comfortable self-confirmation. Each of these choices, made in the specific moment where both options are available, adds one more specific line to the story of who you are. And the story, told consistently enough through consistently genuine choices, becomes your character. Becomes the specific, irreplaceable person you are in the process of constructing through the only means by which genuine construction is possible. The daily, private, unglamorous, completely real choices of who you are when no one is watching and the comfortable alternative is fully available. The evening accounting, not the global assessment of whether you are becoming genuinely irreplaceable. The specific, honest review of the day's choices against the person you are working toward. Where the practice was honored. Where it was not. What the not honoring reveals about where the building needs more deliberate attention tomorrow. And the complete release of the day. Not as punishment carried forward. As material processed. As a day that built what it built and is now genuinely complete. What the world experiences when it encounters the genuinely irreplaceable person. Jonathan did not become irreplaceable because he made himself impossible to do without in any organizational sense. He became irreplaceable in the more important sense, in the sense that the people whose lives he genuinely touched could not find the same experience elsewhere. Could not find, in any other person, the specific quality of Jonathan's honesty and Jonathan's courage and Jonathan's genuine care and Jonathan's specific mastery engaged with the genuine curiosity that was specifically his. He could be professionally replaced. He had been. That had been demonstrated. But he could not be personally replaced. In the specific relationships where his character had been genuinely expressed and genuinely received, where the people on the other side had experienced what it was like to be honestly engaged with by someone who was genuinely honest, courageously supported by someone who was genuinely courageous, fully seen by someone who was genuinely present, these people had received something that no different person's different character could replicate. They had received Jonathan. Specifically. Completely. Irreplaceably. This is what becomes available through the specific daily practice of building genuine character rather than accumulating impressive external assets. Not the professional irreplaceability that organizational life so routinely demonstrates to be illusory. The personal irreplaceability that comes from being so genuinely and specifically yourself, in the specific honesty, the specific courage, the specific depth of care, the specific mastery, the specific ongoing growth, that your absence from the lives you have touched is felt in a way that no one else's presence can fully compensate for. Not because you are the most impressive person they know. Because you are the most genuinely yourself person they know. And yourself, specifically, completely, irreducibly, is what no one else can be. That is what is being built. That is what the daily practice produces. That is the specific, genuine, completely irreplaceable contribution that only you can make. Be the person who makes it. Subscribe to Stoic Ascension right now. Turn on your notifications. Every single video on this channel is built for exactly this depth of genuine philosophical work and this level of practically grounded application. The kind that changes not what you appear to be but who you actually are in the moments that matter. What comes after this builds directly on everything you just heard. Every video goes deeper. Every video takes the practice further into the complete interior work of a genuinely built life. The world is full of replaceable people. Not because people are not valuable. But because most people are building the kind of value that can be found somewhere else. The person who builds genuine character, who honors genuine values in the genuinely difficult moments, who develops genuine mastery through genuine sustained engagement, who brings genuine presence to genuine relationships, who maintains genuine honesty even when the cost is real, this person is not building something that can be found somewhere else. They are building themselves. Specifically, completely, irreplaceably. Be that person. Not tomorrow. Now. In the next choice you make. The one where the genuine thing and the comfortable thing are both available. Choose the genuine thing. That is where the irreplaceable person is built. Begin. Kill your average self. He almost did not send the email. He had written it 3 times. Deleted it 3 times. Written it a 4th time, read it twice, and held his finger over the send button for a period that he would later be unable to accurately estimate. It felt like minutes, though it was probably seconds, with the specific interior paralysis of someone standing at the edge of something genuinely irreversible. The email was to his supervisor. It said, with the specific directness that 3 rewrites had finally produced, that he was resigning from the position he had held for 9 years. That he was declining the promotion that had just been offered. That he was choosing, instead, a direction that had no guarantee of success and no established path and no institutional support and no salary for the foreseeable future. His name was Lawrence. He was 35 years old. He had spent 9 years building a career that was, by every conventional measure, successful. The salary was respectable. The progression was reliable. The work was not meaningless, he was contributing something genuine to something genuine. The colleagues were people he respected. The organization valued him. None of it was wrong. That was the specific difficulty. He was not escaping something bad. He was choosing to leave something adequate. And adequate, from the inside, felt like a particular kind of slow suffocation that no external assessment of it as objectively fine could prevent. He had been, for 9 years, operating at approximately 60% of what he understood himself to be genuinely capable of. Not because the work was undemanding. It was genuinely demanding. But the specific dimension of himself that the demand was placed upon was not the dimension that he understood to contain his genuine capacity. He was performing the functions that the role required with sufficient competence to be valued and promoted. He was not doing anything that required the part of him that felt most genuinely alive. He had a specific phrase for it, used only in the private space of his own journal and never in any conversation with anyone who might reasonably offer the practical objections that the phrase would invite. He was living his average self. Not his worst self. His average self. The self that was safe and competent and reliable and unremarkable and never went to bed at night with the specific satisfaction of someone who had operated at their genuine capacity and who knew it. The self that moved through each day in the comfortable groove of what was established and familiar and socially approved and financially sensible. The self that managed the reasonable expectations of a reasonable life with reasonable competence. The average self. He sent the email. Not because he was certain of success. He was not. The direction he was moving toward was genuinely uncertain and the probability of specific outcomes was genuinely unknown and the financial consequences of the choice were genuinely significant and the social consequences, the specific, quiet withdrawal of the approval that the conventional path had been providing, were genuinely uncomfortable. He sent it because he had finally understood something that 9 years of average self-living had been specifically designed to allow him to defer understanding. That the average self does not protect you. It slowly, quietly, entirely replaces you. Not through a dramatic moment of obvious loss. Through the specific, daily, accumulative process of choosing the comfortable familiar over the genuinely reaching. The safe over the genuine. The approved over the alive. The average over the specific, irreplaceable, genuinely particular version of yourself that exists in the potential beyond the average. He had been killing that version of himself for 9 years. One reasonable choice at a time. One comfortable deferral at a time. One acceptable compromise at a time. Each of them individually defensible. Each of them collectively amounting to the specific internal atrophying of everything most genuinely him. He sent the email. And in the sending, in the specific, terrifying, completely genuine act of choosing something that required more of him than the average self was being asked to provide, something that had been atrophying began, tentatively and uncertainly and with genuine effort, to become available again. This is what we are exploring today. Not as the counsel of reckless abandonment of everything responsible. As the honest, philosophically grounded, genuinely urgent examination of the specific process by which the average self replaces the genuine self. And what is required to reverse that replacement before the reversal is no longer available. This is Stoic Ascension. Subscribe to this channel right now and turn on your notifications because every single video here is built for exactly this level of honest philosophical engagement. The kind that names what most people feel but have never been given precise enough language to genuinely confront. What comes after this builds directly on everything you are about to hear. Do not miss what is coming. What the average self actually is, and how it forms. The average self is not a villain. This is the first and most important thing to understand about it. It is not the product of laziness or cowardice or any fundamental inadequacy of character. It is the natural, almost inevitable product of a specific set of pressures that every human being navigates and that the vast majority of human beings navigate by gradually, incrementally, almost invisibly accommodating rather than genuinely resisting. The average self is the version of yourself that emerges when the primary governance of your choices shifts from genuine interior direction to external social management. When what you do and how you are and who you present yourself to be is determined primarily not by what the genuine interior requires but by what the social environment approves, what the institutional structure rewards, what the people around you expect, and what the cumulative weight of previous choices has established as the default. It forms slowly. Almost invisibly. Through the accumulation of individually reasonable choices that each represent a small departure from genuine interior direction in the direction of social approval or institutional reward or comfortable familiar default. The first compromise is so small that calling it a compromise feels melodramatic. You choose the more pragmatic professional direction over the genuinely compelling one because the pragmatic direction has a clearer path and the compelling one has too much uncertainty at this particular moment. You will return to the compelling one when the circumstances are more favorable. The circumstances become more favorable. The return does not happen. Because the pragmatic direction has now accumulated investment, financial, social, psychological, that makes the return feel increasingly expensive. And a new small compromise is made. A further departure from the genuine interior direction in the direction of the established path that the previous compromise set in motion. This continues. Each step individually reasonable. Each step cumulatively moving further from the specific version of yourself that the genuine interior was pointing toward and further into the specific version of yourself that the social environment's approval and the institutional structure's reward and the comfortable familiar's gravitational pull are collectively producing. By the time the process is visible, by the time the specific experience of operating at 60% and living in the comfortable groove of the established and familiar becomes sufficiently uncomfortable to be genuinely noticed, the average self has been building for years. Sometimes decades. And the distance between where you are and where the genuine interior was pointing has grown from a small correctable gap into something that looks, from the inside, like an enormous and possibly uncrossable distance. The Stoics understood this process with the specific precision of people who had watched it operate across countless lives and who had developed a philosophy specifically designed to interrupt it. Epictetus described the average self in terms of the person who has surrendered the governance of their choices to external forces. Who has allowed the opinions of others, the approval of the crowd, the rewards of the institution, to become the primary directors of what they do and who they are. Who is governed from outside rather than from inside. Who is performing a life rather than inhabiting one. Marcus Aurelius described the specific danger of drifting. Of allowing the day's demands and the established patterns and the momentum of what has been built to carry the life forward without the specific, daily, deliberate examination of where the life is actually going and whether that direction is genuinely chosen or merely accumulated. He wrote about the necessity of regular return to the genuine interior. Of asking, regularly and honestly, whether the life being lived was the one that genuine examination would choose. Not whether it was adequate by external measures. Whether it was genuinely the direction that the most honest interior would select. Most people never ask this question. Not because they are avoiding it consciously. Because the average self that the accumulating compromises have built is so thoroughly the context of their daily experience that the question of whether a different self might have been possible, and might still be possible, has stopped feeling like a genuine question and has started feeling like the fantasy of someone who does not understand how things actually work. The average self's most effective defense is the specific belief that it is the only realistic version of yourself available. That the genuine interior direction that would lead somewhere other than here is impractical, irresponsible, immature, or simply impossible given the specific circumstances of the specific life that the specific choices have produced. This belief is the average self's primary protection. And killing the average self begins with recognizing this belief for exactly what it is. Not realism. The rationalization of accommodation. Why the Stoics insisted on the genuine self over the average one, the philosophical foundation. The Stoic philosophical tradition is, at its deepest level, a philosophy of genuine self-actualization. Not self-actualization in the popular psychological sense of discovering and expressing a fixed inner essence, but in the more demanding and more precise Stoic sense of genuinely becoming the person that honest examination reveals as most fully human, most fully alive, most genuinely aligned with the specific qualities, wisdom, courage, justice, self-discipline, that constitute genuine excellence of character. The average self is, in the Stoic framework, a form of failing to be fully human. Not a moral failure in the judgmental sense. A specific, tragic failure to inhabit the genuine potential of what a human being actually is and actually is capable of. Epictetus asked his students a question that the Stoic tradition has returned to consistently across centuries: do you know what you are? Not who you are in the social sense, your name, your role, your position. What you are. What kind of being a human being actually is. What the genuine potential of that being is. And whether the life you are living is in any genuine relationship to that potential. His answer to what kind of being a human being is was precise and demanding. A human being is a rational, social creature capable of genuine wisdom, genuine courage, genuine justice, and genuine excellence. Not capable of these things in the sense of having them as fixed traits, but capable in the sense of being able to build them through the specific daily practice of choosing and exercising them. And the person who is not choosing and exercising them, who is instead choosing safety and comfort and social approval and the convenient compromise, is failing to be what they actually are. Is living the average self rather than the genuine one. Is, in the most precise Stoic sense, wasting the specific resource of a human life on the production of something considerably smaller than what a human life is actually capable of producing. Marcus Aurelius spent his private journals in a continuous, honest, demanding engagement with exactly this question. Not am I successful by the external measures available to me. Am I becoming what a human being is capable of becoming? Am I living at the full height of what this specific life makes available? Or am I accommodating? Compromising? Drifting? Choosing the comfortable familiar over the genuinely reaching? He was Emperor of Rome. By every external measure, he had surpassed every reasonable standard of success. His private journals reveal someone who understood that external success and the genuine living of the genuine self are not the same thing. Who held himself to the specific internal standard of genuine character development with the same, arguably greater, rigor than any external standard of worldly success. This is the Stoic understanding of why the average self must be killed. Not because it is evil. Because it is an abandonment of the specific responsibility that comes with being the specific kind of being a human being is. A responsibility to become genuinely more than the comfortable compromise. To inhabit the genuine potential rather than the socially approved substitute. To choose, in each specific moment that genuine choice is available, the direction of the genuine self over the gravity of the average one. The specific mechanisms through which the average self maintains itself, and how each must be addressed. The average self is not maintained by a single force. It is maintained by a system of specific, reinforcing mechanisms that work together to keep the accommodation in place and to make the genuine self's direction feel increasingly unavailable. Understanding each mechanism is the beginning of being able to genuinely address it. The mechanism of social approval as primary governance. The human being is a social creature. The need for belonging, for recognition, for the approval of the people whose opinion matters, these needs are genuine and their satisfaction is genuinely important. The Stoics never denied the social nature of human beings or suggested that the opinions of others were irrelevant. But they were precise about the specific danger of allowing social approval to become the primary governance of your choices. Of making what you do primarily a function of what the social environment will approve rather than what the genuine interior would choose. The average self is, in significant measure, the product of social approval governance. The choices that were made because they were what the people around you expected. The directions that were taken because they were what the social environment recognized and rewarded. The aspects of the genuine self that were suppressed or modified because they were too unusual, too demanding, too far outside the range of what the social environment was comfortable approving. Killing this mechanism requires the specific practice of what the Stoics called philosophical independence. The deliberate, daily practice of making at least some choices from genuine interior direction rather than from social approval. The practice of asking, before each significant choice, whether you are choosing from the genuine interior or from the social environment's expectations. And then, this is the demanding part, actually choosing from the genuine interior even when the social environment's expectations point somewhere different. Not in all things. Not in ways that are gratuitously offensive or unnecessarily destructive of genuine relationships. But consistently. In the specific choices that matter most. In the choices about direction, about investment, about who to be in the moments that most reveal it. In those choices, the governance must come from inside rather than from outside. This is the specific practice that Lawrence had not been doing for 9 years. His choices had been primarily governed by social approval, by the institutional reward structure, by the expectations of the people around him, by the comfortable familiarity that the approval-governed life had produced. The email he finally sent was the first choice in years that came primarily from the genuine interior rather than from the social governance structure that had been running the show. The mechanism of sunk cost reasoning. The average self protects itself with extraordinary effectiveness through the specific reasoning pattern that psychologists call the sunk cost fallacy and that the Stoics addressed with remarkable directness in their philosophical framework. The reasoning goes like this. You have already invested significantly in the direction that the average self represents. Years of your life. Substantial financial resources. The professional relationships and the institutional position and the specific knowledge and expertise that the accumulated investment has produced. Leaving all of this to pursue the direction that the genuine self points toward would mean writing off everything that has been invested. Would mean acknowledging that the direction of the previous years was not the optimal one. Would mean beginning again from something closer to zero in a direction that has no established path and no guaranteed outcome. This reasoning feels very persuasive because it engages something that is genuinely true. The investment is real. The cost of redirecting is real. The uncertainty of the new direction is real. What it misrepresents is the cost of not redirecting. The specific, ongoing, daily cost of continuing to invest in a direction that the genuine interior has identified as not genuinely aligned with what the genuine self is actually pointing toward. The cost measured not in money or professional position but in the specific atrophying of the genuine self that continues to occur with each additional year of investment in the wrong direction. The Stoics were precise about this. They understood that the relevant question in any decision about direction is not how much has been invested in the current direction but what the genuine assessment of the current direction produces when the investment is excluded from the analysis. What does the direction provide when the sunk cost is honestly set aside? What does it cost in the specific currency of genuine self-development? And is the continued investment in it the best available use of the time that remains? Marcus Aurelius addressed this with his characteristic directness. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Not the past investment. The present moment and the direction it genuinely points. The sunk cost mechanism is among the average self's most powerful defenders. Killing it requires the specific, honest practice of evaluating the current direction not by what has been invested in it but by what it actually provides and at what genuine cost to the genuine self's development. The mechanism of worst-case fixation. The average self survives because the genuine self's direction is genuinely uncertain. And the specific experience of genuine uncertainty is something that the untrained mind manages through the specific cognitive strategy of worst-case fixation, the habitual, automatic focus on the worst possible outcomes of the uncertain direction. The job left without a guaranteed replacement. The business started without a guaranteed market. The relationship ended without a guaranteed better one. The direction chosen without a guaranteed arrival. The genuine self pursued without a guaranteed external validation of the choice. The worst-case fixation takes these genuine uncertainties and converts them into the maximally catastrophic version of themselves. The job left means poverty. The business started means failure and embarrassment. The relationship ended means permanent loneliness. The genuine self-pursued means rejection and isolation. These worst cases are possible. They are not, in the honest statistical assessment of most people's genuine situations, likely. And they are not, in the Stoic framework, what the decision should be made from. The Stoic response to worst-case fixation is not the naive insistence that everything will work out. It is the specific, honest, examined engagement with the actual probabilities and the actual consequences of the actual options. The practice of asking what the worst case actually is, how likely it actually is, and whether it is actually worse than the specific, ongoing cost of the average self's continued governance. And then, this is the practice that most people do not do, asking what the best case of remaining in the average self actually is. The continuation of the comfortable groove. The maintenance of the adequate. The ongoing production of the 60% version of what you are actually capable of. The honest comparison of these two is not always as clear-cut as the worst-case fixation suggests. The worst case of the genuine self's direction is often less catastrophic than the fixation makes it. The best case of the average self's continuation is often less satisfying than the comfort of the familiar makes it feel. The mechanism of temporal deferral. The average self's most effective long-term strategy is the perpetual postponement of the genuine self's direction to a future moment when the conditions will be more favorable. When the financial situation is more secure. When the children are older. When the professional position is more established. When the timing is better. When the circumstances cooperate in the specific ways that the genuine self's direction requires but that the current circumstances do not provide. The Stoics addressed this mechanism with a directness that is both uncomfortable and entirely accurate. The future moment of more favorable conditions almost never arrives. Not because circumstances do not change. They do. But because the moment the current obstacle to the genuine self's direction is resolved, a new obstacle is generated by the changed circumstances. The financial security that would have made the direction possible arrives at the same time as the new responsibilities that make the direction feel as risky as before. The children who were too young become the children who are now in school and require stability. The professional position that was too insecure becomes the professional position that is now too valuable to jeopardize. There is always a reason to wait. And the waiting is the average self's most patient and most effective strategy for indefinite preservation. Marcus Aurelius wrote about the specific urgency of the present moment with the consistency of someone who genuinely understood that the present moment is the only moment in which any genuine action is ever taken. That the future moments the temporal deferral is pointing toward are not real in any actionable sense. That the only real moment is now. And that the genuine self's direction, if it is ever to be genuinely taken, must begin now. Not in its full, completed form. But in the specific, small, immediately available expression that the present moment actually contains. What killing the average self actually requires, the honest accounting. Killing the average self is not a single dramatic act. It is not the sending of a single email, the making of a single grand gesture, the one bold choice that permanently replaces accommodation with genuine self-expression. It is a practice. A daily, ongoing, never-finished practice of choosing the genuine over the average in the specific moments where both are available. Not all moments provide this choice in visible form. Many moments of a day are genuinely neutral, the choice between coffee and tea, the route taken to work, the specific order in which tasks are completed. These moments do not carry the weight of the genuine self versus the average self. But many moments do. More than most people recognize. And the practice of killing the average self is the practice of recognizing these moments and choosing differently in them than the average self's gravitational pull is directing. The moment where genuine engagement with a difficult idea is available and the comfortable dismissal of it is also available. The moment where genuine honesty in a conversation is available and the comfortable vagueness is also available. The moment where the work could be done at the level that the genuine self is actually capable of or at the level that is sufficient for the external expectations. The moment where the risk that genuine growth requires could be taken or the comfortable familiar could be maintained. In each of these moments, the average self is choosing. Has been choosing. Will continue choosing unless something interrupts the choosing with genuine deliberateness. The interruption is the practice. The specific, daily, practiced pause that asks, is this the choice of the genuine self or the average one? Is this the direction of the person I am actually capable of being or the direction of the comfortable groove? Is this engagement at the level of genuine capacity or at the level of social adequacy? And then the genuine choice. Not always the dramatic one. Not always the one that involves significant visible risk. But the genuine one. The one that comes from the actual interior rather than from the social governance or the sunk cost reasoning or the worst-case fixation or the temporal deferral. These small, daily, mostly private genuine choices are the practice through which the average self is killed. Not through a single grand gesture. Through the accumulation of thousands of specific moments in which the average self's choice was available and the genuine self's choice was made instead. This is demanding. Not because each individual choice is impossibly difficult. Because the accumulation requires consistency across the full range of conditions that daily life provides, including and especially the conditions in which the average self's gravitational pull is strongest. The conditions of genuine social pressure, of genuine financial anxiety, of genuine institutional risk. The conditions in which the comfortable familiar is most seductive and the genuine self's direction is most uncertain and most costly. In those conditions, the practice requires the specific quality that the Stoics identified as the foundation of all genuine excellence, courage. Not the dramatic courage of the single grand gesture. The quiet, consistent, daily courage of choosing the genuine over the average in the specific moments where the average is safer and the genuine is costly. Where the accommodation is immediately rewarded and the genuine engagement is immediately uncertain. Where the average self's direction is the path of least resistance and the genuine self's direction requires the specific effort of going against the grain of what is comfortable and established and socially approved. This courage is built the same way any other genuine quality is built. Through practice. Through the accumulation of specific moments where it was exercised. Where the genuine choice was made despite the genuine discomfort. Where the average self's gravitational pull was met with something that genuinely resisted it. Each of those moments is both the exercise and the building of the capacity for the next one. And the capacity, built through consistent practice across months and years, becomes the specific quality of a person who has genuinely killed their average self. Not perfectly. Not permanently without the need for ongoing practice. But genuinely. In the specific ways that produce the recognizable difference between someone who is genuinely themselves and someone who is performing the version of themselves that the social environment has been shaping. The specific daily practices that kill the average self, what they look like in an actual life. The morning practice of genuine self-confrontation. Before the day begins providing its specific pressures toward the average self's direction, before the institutional demands, before the social governance, before the comfortable familiar's gravity begins operating, create the specific space for honest self-confrontation. The specific question is not, how can I be more impressive today? That question serves the social governance mechanism. The specific question is, what would the genuinely best version of myself do today that the average version would not? What specific choice, in the specific circumstances this day is likely to provide, represents the genuinely reaching over the comfortable adequate? This question, asked honestly and specifically, almost always produces a clear and uncomfortable answer. Because the genuinely best version of yourself knows, with considerable specificity, what it would do that the average version is declining to do. It knows the conversation that needs to be had. The risk that deserves to be taken. The quality of engagement that the work deserves. The honest expression that the relationship deserves. The specific direction that the genuine interior has been pointing toward and that the average self has been finding reasons to defer. Write it down. Not as aspiration. As commitment. The specific, concrete, immediately actionable thing that the genuine self would do today. And then, this is the practice, do it. Not the entire direction. The specific, available, immediately actionable expression of it that today provides. The practice of voluntary exposure to the genuine self's discomfort. The average self is maintained by the specific management of discomfort. The specific avoidance of the circumstances that make the average self feel genuinely challenged. The specific arrangement of life to minimize the exposure to the conditions that would require something beyond the comfortable adequate. Killing the average self requires the deliberate reversal of this management. The specific, regular, voluntary exposure to the circumstances that the average self most reliably avoids. The difficult conversation chosen rather than deferred. The work brought to the level of genuine capacity rather than maintained at the level of social adequacy. The risk accepted rather than managed into non-existence. The vulnerability expressed rather than protected behind the comfortable distance of the average self-specific defenses. Each of these voluntary exposures is simultaneously unpleasant in the specific way that challenge is unpleasant and productive in the specific way that genuine self-development is productive. The discomfort signals genuine engagement with the edge of current capacity. And the edge of current capacity is exactly where genuine development occurs. Seneca practiced voluntary hardship daily. Not as punishment but as the specific, deliberate maintenance of his access to the genuine self that comfortable circumstances could gradually erode. He wanted to know, not from theory but from direct experience, that the average self's management of comfort was not necessary. That what was genuine in him was accessible in the absence of the comfort as well as in its presence. This practice available to you is the deliberate, regular, voluntary engagement with the circumstances that produce the genuine self rather than the average one. The evening practice of honest assessment. At the end of each day, the specific, honest assessment of where the genuine self was expressed and where the average self governed. Not the global assessment of whether you are becoming genuinely yourself. The specific assessment of today's specific choices. Where the genuine choice was made. Where the average self's gravitational pull won. What the specific circumstances were in each case. What this reveals about where the practice needs the most deliberate attention tomorrow. This assessment is not comfortable. The average self's governance is often more extensive than the comfortable self-image would prefer to acknowledge. The specific moments where the genuine choice was available and the average one was made instead are more numerous, on most days, than the aspiration toward genuine selfhood would ideally produce. But the honesty of the assessment is exactly what makes it productive rather than merely uncomfortable. The specific identification of where the average self is most active, the specific circumstances, the specific pressures, the specific mechanisms that most reliably produce the average choice over the genuine one, is the most accurate available map of where the practice needs to be most concentrated. And the map, used honestly, makes tomorrow's practice more targeted and therefore more productive than today's. The practice of community with genuine self-people. The average self is maintained, in significant measure, by the social environment that has been built around it. The professional community that rewards the adequate. The social relationships that are comfortable with the comfortable version. The specific people whose presence most reliably reinforces the average self's direction by expecting it, rewarding it, and being made uncomfortable by anything that departs significantly from it. This does not mean abandoning these communities or these relationships. Most of them contain genuine value alongside the specific average self reinforcement they provide. But killing the average self requires the deliberate building of additional community, of relationships with people who are themselves engaged in the genuine self-direction. Who are not comfortable with comfortable adequacy. Who expect more from themselves and from the people they spend genuine time with. Who provide the specific social environment in which the genuine self is not only permitted but actively expected and reinforced. Lawrence found this after the email. In the specific, difficult, genuinely uncertain years of building the direction the genuine self had been pointing toward, the relationships that sustained the practice were the ones with people who were themselves doing something similar. Who understood the specific cost of the genuine direction from direct experience. Who could not be persuaded that comfortable adequacy was sufficient because they had felt, from the inside, what it meant to operate beyond it. These relationships are among the most valuable things available in the project of killing the average self. Find them. Build them. Maintain them with the specific deliberateness that the project requires. What becomes available when the average self is genuinely killed? Lawrence spent 3 years in the direction the email made possible. The specific contents of those 3 years, the work, the direction, the specific form that the genuine self's expression took, were not what the comfortable groove of the previous 9 years had produced. They were also not what the aspiration had specifically imagined. The genuine self's expression rarely produces exactly what the imagination of it generates in advance. What it produced was something that the imagination could not have generated in advance because it was specifically his. Specifically the product of the genuine interior operating in genuine conditions with genuine engagement. Not the generic version of what the genuine direction produces. His version. The specific, irreplaceable, genuinely his version that only the genuine interior operating genuinely could have produced. And the quality of daily life inside that production was different from the quality of daily life inside the comfortable groove in the specific way that matters most. He went to bed at night knowing that the day had required something genuine from him. Not easy. Not reliably successful. Not externally validated in the ways that the institutional structure had provided. But genuine. Actually requiring the part of him that felt most genuinely alive. This is what killing the average self makes available. Not the guarantee of external success. Not the elimination of genuine difficulty. Not the arrival at a destination where everything is as it was imagined. The specific, daily, experiential quality of a life that is actually requiring something of the genuine self. That is actually engaging the part of you that is most genuinely capable and most genuinely alive. That is not, day by day, requiring 60% and leaving 40% of what you actually are untouched and therefore slowly atrophying. The full version. The genuine version. The specific, particular, completely yours version of what a human life can be when the average self's comfortable management of it is genuinely challenged rather than indefinitely accommodated. This is what the Stoics were pointing toward. What Epictetus was building from inside the 9x6 of human bondage. What Marcus Aurelius was building from inside the extraordinary demands of the most powerful position in the ancient world. What every person who has ever genuinely killed their average self has discovered in the genuinely uncertain, genuinely demanding, genuinely alive direction that the genuine self's governance produces. It is available to you. Not through the single dramatic gesture. Through the daily, consistent, honest, courageous practice of choosing the genuine over the average in the specific moments where both are available. Starting with the next one. The one that is available right now. In this specific moment. Subscribe to Stoic Ascension right now. Turn on your notifications. Every single video on this channel is built for exactly this depth and exactly this honesty. The kind that names what most people feel but have never been given precise enough language to genuinely confront and genuinely address. The philosophy, the practice, and the complete understanding of what genuinely becoming yourself actually requires. What comes after this builds directly on everything you just heard. Every video goes deeper. Every video takes the practice further into the specific dimensions of the genuine life that only the genuine self can produce. Lawrence almost did not send the email. The average self had 9 years invested in not sending it. He sent it anyway. And what became available after the sending was not what the average self had been managing to prevent. It was what had always been available on the other side of the average self's governance. The genuine self. Actually alive. Actually operating at capacity. Actually producing the specific, irreplaceable version of a life that only that particular person, genuinely inhabiting their genuine direction, was capable of producing. Kill your average self. Not with the dramatic gesture. With the next genuine choice. The one the average self is comfortable declining. Make it. Now.